Alright, I'm back with more Deltarune. I really want to record like a regular video, but I'm still so sick that I just can't. So we're going to record more of the lore playthrough instead. Thou hast transplanted us to thine castle town, and truly a magnificent town of castles it art. But ho, something art lackingeth, it feeleth. Couldst thou guys perhapseth bring in an evil ruler or something? Lander hath benounced me vice father. For henceforth hence I do all the cookings and cleanings. Perhapseth I shouldeth seeketh a new employer. Oh, rules card. Oh, welcome to Jaru Town. Or so I heard it's called. Come to think of it, welcome to me too, haha. I think we're gonna like living here. So notably, Jaru is the name of the creator that I assigned, not the name of the vessel. So that means, well, from a meta standpoint, obviously this town belongs to me because I kind of rule it as the player. However, from a non-meta perspective, that means that some sort of entity, some Kara equivalent, or not a Kara equivalent per se, but rather just like how Kara was both a real character in the lore and a stand-in for the player, there has to be a Jaru in this game who is both a stand-in for me and their own character. And that character did something or another that caused this NPC to believe this town was called Jaru Town. Now, we don't know how he got this idea in his head, because he just popped up here, as you'll recall. Like, we fell down, we dropped everyone into the town, and I step over, and he's here, and he says this. And that means that he had to have heard it pretty recently, and presumably not from Rousey, since Rousey was with us. Either way, though, that means that this guy has met, presumably recently, someone who said this was a Jaru town, or they found something somewhere, like maybe some writing on a wall, or a plaque, or something that said Jaru town on it, and he got, or just Jaru, and he got the idea. Point is, the entity known as Jaru must have come here in some way, shape, or form prior to now. And that entity is, separate from Chris. So that's interesting. Who that entity is going to be pretty integral to the story of this game and the big mysteries. Because the only thing we know about the Jaru entity is that they were involved in the character creation sequence at the start of the game. Presumably with Gaster, but we don't actually know. That's why we call him Jeff. Thanks to you, Commander, we've been liberated. I hereby declare today National Ham Sandwich Day of Independence. This is a reference to how Susie has been banned from free ham sandwich day at the school. So, and I think she brings that up, she brings up the ham sandwich thing as a way of flirting with the Rudens, perhaps? Or flirting with somebody. Anyway, it's a reference to that. Yeah. This guy always seems like he's enjoying life more than me. Maybe it's because he's a higher level? Bow bow. I'm just a block. I don't get it. Did we go somewhere? Notably, these new houses are like, they don't have doors on them. Presumably, actually, once we get more monsters, the walls will expand further outwards, and these will become more housing for those monsters. Or not monsters, darkners. Also, this is a new sprite, because Sham's shop looked quite different before. It's got like a little wizard, not a wizard hat per se, but a hat on it with some pins sticking out. It's still stitched together in a way. It's got buttons on the front. Very cute. A cafe. And then, of course, the little bun. It's a clean start for us here. Tsukiri. Let me just double check and see what tsukiri means. Yeah, it seems like this is used to refer to things that are recently cleaned or are brand new. And since we later see this little dude sweeping, that suggests that and it's a dust bunny, so clean makes sense. Yeah, and it makes it a pun as well, which Toby loves those. Mama Biba, welcome to Top Bakery. Our special chefs spin baked goods at the top of their class. So many puns. Seems Hathy likes this place. She hopes you'll find enough beds to inspect. You'll lose your bed inspector title if you don't inspect enough beds. What's funny is I'm pretty sure this Hathy has something different to say, obviously, depending on whether you've inspected beds and also whether you chose violence. If you chose violence in Chapter 1, then I think this Hathy says something about forgiving you. So there's that. Let's see, that's all the external NPCs. Let me pop out. We'll go into the shops after we look at all the outside people. Oh, it's quite a wonderful town, really. Thank you. So, why am I alone here? A bit of self-reflection, I suppose. I do realize I was quite a coward before. So, I wanted to say, well, I still am. My cards, I cannot handle society. For now, I'll be living at the top of this cliff. When I'm ready to meet society again, I will be back. Thank you for the wonderful home. I will not use it. What a strange fellow. It's interesting that he goes up to the cliffs, just because that's like where we start. There's a lot of mysterious stuff up there. I can't say much more beyond that. I think his name is literally Mr. Society. It's either that or Mr. Elegance. Actually, that's kind of important for distinguishing what it is he's saying. Mr. Society. Yeah, no, that is Mr. Society. So him wanting to meet society could also be read as like when he's ready to face himself or something to that effect. What happens if we try to go down here? Chris, I have something to show you in the castle. Yeah. And this is Mr. Elegance. I wonder if he says something different if you talk to him before talking to Mr. Elegance. Or before talking to Mr. Society. Mr. Society left, didn't he? I reckon I knew this wouldn't happen. It's not no fault of yours. He'll be back one day. It's not no fault of yours. He'll be back one day. And if I leave and come back, do you say something different? Yeah, if you talk to him before talking to Mr. Elegance, he says he pledges to fix the town up using nostril grease. So, you know, nothing too important. Without trees, I must gain nutrients by eating clothes, such as the way of the worm. Looks like the clothes are nibbled. Take a bite? Yes. You put your mouth against the mannequin's cheek. Chris? Don't bother. It tastes awful. And Susie? It's so funny. Because it implies it's a mannequin dressed in poor taste. That's so silly. The implication, of course, is that Susie at some point tried to eat this thing. Presumably it happened when she ran away at the start of Chapter 1, when she's like, I'm not interested in this prophecy stuff. So when she ran past after Lancer, She must have stopped to try and bite this thing and didn't like the taste. That's so funny. I like being like this. Don't tell anybody. Very silly. Alright, let's see. It's a manual. Read a topic. Recruit. Or no, do not read. There's no time to read books. Yeah, I remember they said that at the start of the game. If you spare or pacify enough enemies of the same type, they will be recruited. Recruits will appear in your town. Wonder what will happen if you get them all. Recruit almost has a military tone to it, doesn't it? I wonder if that's intentional. Town. Wonder what happens if you get them all? You can check the area's recruit status at save points. Certain bosses are excluded. Controls. Here's a reminder of the controls. Change them in the config menu. Z. Confirm and interact with things. X. Cancel. Hold to run. Shows all text instantly. Opens the menu, holds down to quickly skip text boxes. Okay. Item storage. You'll now have access to a storage menu at save points. When you're out of space, items you find or buy will be sent to your storage. Feel free to put things inside you might not be able to use yet. It's funny how we now have a manual on its own little podium that we can actually use. The castle town is transformed from the power of friendship. Interesting. They're joking, but they're also not joking, because the town did transform, and it is because we brought people here. So that would suggest that, once again, there's just sort of this ambient power to the Dark World that has a lot more direct, like, concepts like friendship have a lot more impact on the physical reality of the Dark World than it does in the Light World. You are filled with the power of friendship-based architecture. It's so funny, but also kind of true. Oh, recruits and storage. A lot of interesting details here. Rooted. Said to be someone's best friend, but maybe not. Shine on you, lazy diamond. Shine on you, crazy diamond is a song. Said to be someone's best friend, but maybe not. Now, initially I thought this was like diamonds are a girl's best friend kind of reference, but it could also be a reference to like certain social dynamics in the town, particularly in the diner. They like shiny things, they dislike effort, and they have these multiple rows of question marks, suggesting that there's going to be either new mechanics or other ways that these characters can evolve over time. So that's very interesting. And of course they have elements. I've discussed the elements ad nauseum in my elemental pairs video, so I won't be discussing it too heavily here. It is interesting that Rudin is level 2. Are all these... Jigsari is not level 2. That's interesting, because that means that technically all of these guys are higher levels than us, with the exception of Jigsari. So presumably that means they've absorbed more power over time, presumably through combat, which is why Jigsari is still level 1. It just doesn't really do well with violence. Like, it gives up almost immediately. Hathy, a heart with a big heart, always supporting others with her bullets. Likes lip gloss, dislikes drama. I wonder if we'll literally encounter lip gloss. Like, a darkener based off lip gloss. Or I wonder if... yeah, that would be funny. Pawn Man, a simple organism that takes life one square at a time. It likes sleeping, it dislikes moving backwards. A level 3. That's pretty crazy. A real dust bunny. Known to play dirty, but loves to play clean. Dusty vacuums... or dusty places and vacuums are the things it likes and dislikes. Level 4. That's pretty crazy. I wonder if it's so high level because it's made of dust? Like maybe it's directly absorbed some amount of power from Darkner or from monsters somehow because of the whole dust thing. It's hard to say. A shape-changing fighter, ironically blocking is not forte, likes cross-trainers, dislikes formal shoe wear. What's funny about this is that, it would make sense for this entity to be a level 4 because it actively enjoys fighting. Whereas Rabbik is just a rabbit. Same thing with the Pond Man, where it's like it's a soldier. It makes sense that it would fight. And Hathy, while not much for fighting, does support others in fighting. So that's interesting. And then Jigsaw, it cries tears of joy that you are its boss. It likes fitting in, it dislikes Susie's axe. And it's still a level 1 because it just generally avoids conflict of all sorts. Rune Ranger likes sucking up, dislikes its show getting taped over. I guess because it's a Power Rangers reference. Obsessed with Ranger shows, it lets everyone know it's better than Rudin. And it's a level 5. So this thing is presumably one of the more elite fighters in the Card Kingdom. Then Head Hathy. Although stronger than Hathy, it seems to have fewer friends. It likes peace and quiet, it dislikes being alone. And it's up there with the Rudin Rangers being like one of the most powerful fighters. Very interesting. Love me some Party Dojo. Wow, our house is a dojo? Makes me want to fight. Can't wait to go to sleep. It's a party every day, and I'm the oldest. We're the same age. Of course. Look at those jukeboxes over there. That's funny. They got this spinning like disco balls type thing up ahead, overhead. Hee. Looks like fighting wasn't in the cards for us. Lucky for you. Just hope you don't meet my friends. Yeah, because this was like a cut enemy. So like he shows up at the very end of like in the ending when you're overthrowing King, but you never actually meet or fight him anywhere. Then we have this guy. Finally, dojo for people that are normal shaped. I will train myself for the tournament. Interesting. It's the bed for 3 people or 1 3-headed person. I'm Battles Master. It has to be about battles. Grazing. When shots aim directly, fly to move slow. They aim where you were, not where you go. Take the advantage and move bit by bit. You'll gain TP, but you won't get hit. Hitbox. Shots aren't always as they appear. The bigger they are, the less to fear. You'll only get hurt a little inside. Take your pride and learn the size. Yeah, so like it's kind of the opposite of misleading hitboxes in normal games where the hitbox is bigger than the visuals would imply. In Deltarune, it's the opposite. Hole. We reached our monthly funding goal. I will now talk about our hole. It was dark, filled with darker dollars, fed from subscription by our followers. Working hard, no bank, no lender. We received 1 unit of legal tender. Thanks for donating. You're welcome. Nothing. Okay. Then, of course, we have the boy. Hey, boss. Hey, I'm so glad to have a nice boss. I could shed a tear. But I won't. I'm on the job. I'll cry at home with the kids. Boss, you're strong, but there's always time to learn. The next step after tutorials is training. So, me and the boys got you together a dojo. Complete our battle challenges and get some fabulous prizes. Meanwhile, you might get a little bit tougher. We're going to make you the strongest, boss. Learn how to spare like a champ. Joe's Life Savings. Boss, you can act and spare on the same turn. If you know Chris's act will give an enemy 100% Murray, spare them on the same turn with Susie or Ralse. Beat him up to earn his life savings. Boss, don't listen to that. That's the wrong act. The wrong act. Glow Shard. Chris used the Glow Shard. but nothing happened. Boss, you gotta act and spare on the same turn. Spare. Chris spared Jigsaw Joe, but its name wasn't yellow. Boss, you gotta act and spare on the same turn. Jigsaw Joe looks vulnerable to acting and sparing on the same turn. Oh, fine. Boss. Okay, yeah. Not much else to read here. Jigsaw Joe, shave. Defend? You shaved Jigsaw Joe's stubble. Jigsaw Joe's stubble regrew. Ah, it's my 1 o'clock shadow. Shave. The stubble. It regrew. Ah, it's my 2 o'clock shadow. I've never... Well, guess y'all know what I'm doing for the next few seconds. Ah, it's my 3 o'clock shadow. Ah, it's my 4 o'clock shadow. Ah, it's my 5 o'clock shadow. Ah, it's my 6 o'clock shadow. Well, I thought it would stop at 5 o'clock, but we ain't stopping until this thing breaks. So I'll get back to you guys if it does anything new. 13 o'clock shadow? I don't think there's such thing as the 13 o'clock, dude. Alright, here's the 24 o'clock shadow. Yeah, let's see if it does anything beyond 24. If it does, I'm going to assume it goes on forever. Yeah, I think it might just go on forever, you guys. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call it a day. Oh, boss, you're sparing me? Wait a second, I got something else to remind you of. Boss, it works the same with making an enemy tired. If an act will make an enemy tired, use your says pacify right away. Use a bedtime story. A sleepy story. She told the enemy a bedtime story about beating them up. The enemy became tired. Jigsaw drank coffee. Jigsaw stopped being tired. Boss, you put me to sleep. I mean, you aren't. Make me tired and pacify me, boss. Susie told the enemy a bedtime story. That's how you cast Pacify. I wonder if those Z's that get created by the Pacify spell are similar at all to the ones that Sans emits in Undertale. Interesting detail, so. You did, boss. If you can manage to spare enemies right away, battles will go a lot faster. That's all. An amazing battle. As promised, here's your reward. You receive Joe's life savings, $1. Let's try the Grace Challenge. Grace! Very easy. It's actually pretty fun. It's not Clover's birthday anymore. She will go easy on you now. Clover rematch. I'm just reminded of like the Hades, like the Coliseum matches in Kingdom Hearts. Those are always so much fun to me. I know some people found them tedious, but like doing these super lengthy tournaments was always a really fun challenge for me. Check. Defend. Attack 8, defense 2. 2 hits are better than 1. 3, maybe not. Nice to see you again. This time you die. Please ignore them. Ah! Clover is bickering with ourselves. Guess favorite thing? Choose a topic that Clover likes. No thanks, wrong. Is it that bad? I started today. It's that off. Just what? It's just all. Please stop, you two. Trio of terrible smiles. I wonder what all the topics are. Splat noises, non-birthday tree. Not bad. It's okay. How well do you know us? You know nothing, idiot! Sorry about this. Dice, rules, Starwalker. No thanks, wrong. Is it that bad? No. I was curious if she had different things to say depending on what answer you gave. Hums like an out-of-tune choir. I guess hole? Yeah. Party. Not bad. An amazing battle. As promised, here is your reward. I'm not sure who's talking, but you received club sandwich. Very nice. Oh yeah, my inventory's full. That's funny. Yeah, let's try and make our inventory as diverse as possible. Just that way we have as many interesting options as we can. Bakery. It's very pretty. Very pastel. I am Chef Lancer. Try my delicious hand-formed cookies. They are free for a price. What's the price? $0. Sure. I now pronounce you Cookie and Wife. Lancer Cookie was added to your items. Lancer Cookies? Want one? Sure. You already took your cookie. Wait, I'm still regenerating for the last one. Well, welcome to Top Bakery. I am this bakery's smith, Malleus. I do not know what any of these strange tools are for, but using my skills I can fuse items to create new ones. That's right, you can make a double dark burger, you can make a silver card, you can make a twin ribbon, a spike band, and of course the tension bow. And a strange blade. Chat. Bread? What is this technique you speak of? Fix us. Your body is a weapon too. You must take care of it from time to time. Hoo-ha! Let's feel my technique. Somehow, everyone's HP was restored. Well, don't you feel better after a nice massage? Ha-ha! It is interesting. The shop. Let's see, if I recall correctly, because some of these fusion items I have no real reason to ever, make. So I'll go ahead and look at them real quick, just to see if there's anything lore-wise that might be interesting. Let's see. The regular dark burgers, if you give it to Suji, she's like, ooh, cooked to perfection. If you give it to Rouse, he says, it's a bit burnt, question mark? When giving it to Noelle, she says, is this real meat? And then if you get the DD burger, it says, if you give it to Susie, she says, come on, give me the rest. Because it takes 2 bites to finish. And then if you give it to Rouse, he says, maybe give Susie the rest? And we'll give it to Noelle. She says, there's more? So it seems to just be a big burger. Then there's the silver card, made from the amber cards. Now, the amber cards, it's sort of, yes, thin square charm that sticks to you, increasing defense. It's supposed to be like a sticker, I think, in the real world. Susie says, better than nothing when equipping it. Rouse says, it's sticky, huh, Chris? And Noelle says, it's like a name tag. By contrast, Silver card, it increases drop money by 5%, which is neat. Increases the dark dollars earned during encounters by 5%. If you equip it to Susie, she says, money, that's what I need. If you equip it to Rousey, he says, do they take credit? And if you equip it to Noelle, she says, it goes with my watch. Because she also has, of course, a silver watch. And the do they take credit line is just like a credit card reference, I believe. Nothing too fancy there. Then there's the twin ribbon. The twin ribbon, if equipped to Susie, says it gets worse and worse. Because she doesn't like wearing either of the ribbons. And you equip it to Rousey, he says, try around my horns. And when equipping it to Noelle, she says, ... nostalgic, huh? And the effect of the twin ribbons is it increases the graze area by 56.25% and can be equipped by every party member but Susie. So, like, it just makes it to where it's much easier to graze. So that's cool. And, of course, the main lore here is that, the twin ribbon is, you put your hair in pigtails, and it's kind of implied that that's the hairstyle that Noelle had when she was younger. A black wristband covered in spikes has the tendency to get stuck to itself. So yeah, spike band. Susie says, can't say no to spikes, because she already kind of wears spike bands. Equipping it to Rousey, he says, do I look tough? And if you equip it to Noelle, she says, maybe Susie would like this look. Nothing too fancy about it. Its most notable attribute is that it gives attack and defense. Actually, it gives more attack than defense, despite being an armor item. Then there's the tension bow. This is created from the big shot bow tie and the tension bit combined together. It confers both the benefits of increased TP and defense. So 10% more TP gained from grazing during battle. Oh, interesting. Unlike most other equipment, party members do not comment upon equipping the tension bow, which is similar to how they react to unused items. How curious. And then, of course, there's the Twisted Sword, created from the Thorn Ring and a pure crystal. Presumably, we know what the Thorn Ring is. It's a very dark, sadomasochistic item. And the pure crystal, we don't know what that is, but it's presumably some sort of purified shadow crystal. So it's combining dark and light items, and the dark and the light presumably combined together to make a twisted spiral sword of some kind. As for what they say about the Twisted Sword, it gives 16 attack. It gives the twist. It has a trance effect. However, unlike the Thorn Ring, this effect is non-functional in the current version of the game. It also, unlike the Thorn Ring, which increases trance, seemingly due to there being a downward arrow on the Thorn Ring, or on the Twisted Sword, I should say, presumably it decreases the effect of trance. So it perhaps breaks you free of a trance, or nullifies, or makes you resistant to trances? It's hard to say. As far as stats are concerned, it gives you 16 attack, which is, I think, a lot. Yeah, that seems like a lot. What else? Oh, when interacting with the characters, you can give it to Suzy, or if you attempt to equip it to Suzy, she says, looks bad. If you attempt to equip it to Rousey, he says, it's like a spiral. And when attempting to equip it to Noelle, she says, it's kind of scary. So, interesting. Needless to say, the Twisted Sword is a very mysterious item with a lot of potential lore surrounding it and its role in the Snowgrave route. Although, interestingly, due to the way you get the Thorn Ring, you can't actually complete the Snowgrave route and still get the Twisted Sword, assuming that's the only Thorn Ring you can get. This is due to the fact that when you complete Snowgrave, Noelle leaves with the Thorn Ring, potentially suggesting that the only way you can keep the Thorn Ring and use it for an item is if you abandon the Snowgrave route partway through, which is interesting. So yeah, that's all the items. Cafe. Mamma Mia, I wanted to run the bakery, but someone is already working there. A cafe that serves pastries. What a disgrace. What sort of humiliating thing will happen next? Nothing. Mon amigas, welcome to the bakery. I wish. Prize? I can only generate one spin cake at a time. Please finish your cake and I will give you another. Check recruits. Oh yeah, so... Hey, boss, I'm a dark candy starfey. So, it's interesting. Because they have different dialogue depending on who's sitting where. Sure is great to be here with my best friend, Hathy. Hathy seems fine. It's interesting because the dialogue description of Rudin says that they are supposedly said to be someone's best friend, but maybe not. So maybe they see themselves as being friends with Hathy, but Hathy doesn't like them so much. It's an interesting possibility. And then if you like, Hathy is going to order a heart foam latte. Looks like it wants to osmose some flavorful cubes. Looks like it wants to be dabbed with rubbing alcohol. I seem to recall there being some sort of way to get like special interactions if you put certain characters at certain tables. Everything tastes better with a normally shaped body. Yo, boss, you're treating me? Oh, you shouldn't have. Smile. That's sweet. Hathy drinks an iced tea in silence. Hathy seems fine. Okay, so if there is some way to get like special interactions from like certain combinations of characters, I'm not sure of the specifics. Let me check the wiki real quick. Yeah, I know that at least once you have like the cyber world darkness, you can get some pretty complex combinations, like having certain characters on the sitting together table, and then a different character over here, and this character will be reacting to these characters, stuff like that. The jukebox is broken. It feels like you might never find a working one. Rip. So instead of trying to do full combos, I'm just going to see what every character's reaction is to every other character and show them all here. Just that way, you know, you'll have that as a resource. So we'll start with the Rudins. And we'll put like, yeah, we'll put a Rudin here. Yeah, so we'll start with the Rudin's interaction with all the other Darkners. I'll skip to all the dialogue. Of course, sure is great to be here with my best friend, Hathy. Interesting. Okay, so most of the Rudin interactions don't... Rudin does not have interactions with most. It has one with Hathy. It calls her its best friend. But with... the Rudin Ranger, the regular Rudin says, "Sigh, does this guy have to one-up me on everything?" And the guy says, "I'll have a double starfate. No, triple. Oh, hi, boss." Smile. So that's funny. There's a continued rivalry between the Rudins and the Rudin Rangers. And then Head Hathy. I'm curious on this one, if this one has any change. Head Hathy drinks an iced tea in silence. Nope. Okay, so that's all the Rudin. It only has an interaction with Hathy and with Rudin Ranger. Now let's try Hathy with Hathy. A heart foam latte. Okay, nothing special there. I'll cut ahead to any unique interactions. Here's a unique reaction. Other than with Rudin, Hathy only seems to have a special interaction with the Head Hathy. Head Hathy says, Head Hathy doesn't seem so alone. And then if you interact with regular Hathy, Hathy is letting Head Hathy have a sip of her latte. That's so sweet. Very cute. Alright, now we will switch to Pawn Man. I'll let you know if I find anything unique. Interesting. It seems that there's no special interactions between the Pondmen and the other Darkners, or the other Darkners. Maybe that changes with the Chapter 2 Darkners, but we'll have to wait and see that when I get to the end of the lore playthrough. Next, though, we can go ahead and move to Rabbik. I'll let you know if we have any interactions with these little fellers. Once again, it seems that there's no special interactions with the Rabbik using the other Chapter 1 Darkners. So we will move on to Bloxer. Once again, with the Bloxer, no special interactions with the Chapter 1 Darkners. Once again, nothing special with the Jigsaris, so we will now move on to the Rune Ranger. And with that, we've looked at all the special interactions in the cafe using the Chapter 1 Darkners only. We will, of course, come back and look at all the possible combinations later once we have more Darkners. Next, we have Sham. Same stuff as always. Talk. So, we're here now in a new world, and right off the heels of defeating that clown. Incredible. Oh, what's that? Seems like he gave something to you. That's right, you must not have noticed it. That crystal. It's nearly invisible, but you've been holding it this whole time. Here, I'll take it off your hands and appraise it. Incredible! To think he had a shadow crystal. Shadow crystals, so paused because you can only see their shadow. Oh, that's the end of the sentence. Call it premonition, but I get the feeling you may find more of these. If you can continue to defeat strong adversaries like him, that is. If you can gather more shadow crystals, bring them here. I'm sure I can stitch together something incredible for you. If you can defeat more strong adversaries, you may find more shadow crystals. Try your best. It may be tough, but I'm sure it'll be worth it. Yep. And I don't got much more to say on shadow crystals. See you again. Or not. Yeah, not much more to say on Sham that wasn't said in the first lore playthrough. Very mysterious character, of course. A lot of potential lore there. But as it stands, just with, what we know now, there's nothing more to say that hasn't already been said. It's a bit scary moving to a new place, but as a ball, there's nothing to Sphere except Sphere itself. Yeah, so unfortunately this character will be deleted from the game files post-haste. Prince Rassay, I will keep your hat erect until you need it. Until then, please allow me to pretend to be a wizard. Hiya! Very cute. You got enough Deltarune logos, Rassay. You got one on the ground, got one up here. Also, yet another building where the layout makes no sense. It's like there's 4 windows, but pop in here, it's like, where do those windows go? Just wanted to show off your huge house, huh? No, what I want to show you is upstairs. Notice the wings on the side doors, and then you got triple wings like a seraphim. Very suspicious, actually. Because, it seems very likely to imagine that the angel in this game is something, a biblically accurate, like, horrific entity that's no longer recognizable as something human or monstrous or anything at all. It's got a crown on top, 6 wings, and a heart at the center. Yeah, pretty suspicious. Highly suspicious. Bottom floor, living quarters for bad guys. And then, of course, over here is second floor, living quarters. Oh, I nearly forgot. This is where I cook. You cook everything in a giant witch's pot? Of course. Cauldron cooking is very convenient. Here, Chris, Susie, have a cake. A little thick on the frosting. That was for sharing. Hey, anyone was free to make an interception. Very adorable. Okay, now make a chocolate one. Why don't we go upstairs first? I have a surprise for you two. I made rooms for you in the castle. Rooms? So you can stay here whenever you want. I'd be happy if this place could be like a second home to you. A place that you can go no matter what's happening outside. Oof. That's some heavy foreshadowing of bad things happening in the light world. And also, I just want to point out, what terrible thing could happen in the light world that would make Chris or Susie want to hide where no one else can get them? Somewhere safe and separate from the light world. With Susie being the little troublemaker she is with a potentially very problematic home life, her wanting to come here makes perfect sense. With Chris, though, it's like, what did you predict, Rouse? What do you already know? Do you happen to know that Chris could be in some terrible trouble and might need somewhere to hide from the Lightners? It's almost like you are aware that Azrael is dead and that that's something that's going to be uncovered in the near future. And of course, Rouse having future sight, thanks to the shadow crystals or thanks to the time loop or something to that effect, is really the only explanation for these rooms being done already. Unless you want to say, oh, magic, and he just magicked them into existence. But if you excuse that argument, then all you really have is that Rouse knew about Chris and Susie, knew that they would become friends, knew that they would come here and use these rooms. And that, because, 24 hours is not enough time to build 2 fully customized bedrooms like this. So, yeah, I think this is pretty clear evidence that Rouse has future sight to some extent. How he has it and through what means, up for debate. But I think it's pretty clear that he knows a fair bit more than he's letting on. Well, we'll take a look. Hey, let me look at my freaking room a sec. Damn, all I want to do is run off and steal cake. Is that projection? I didn't actually mean to go back. Hey, Rouse, what's up here? Oh, just more rooms I'm renovating. So is your room up there? Yes, I still haven't dusted it, though. Yeah, like we need to see your nerdy glasses collection anyway. Yeah, I interpret this one of 2 ways. Either A, Rouse has some pathetic, sad-looking room with nothing in it, because he doesn't care about himself that much. Or B, he doesn't have a room at all yet, because he didn't plan on them wanting to go up there on day 1. Sorry, work in progress. Oh, look at that wink. That winky face. He knows. More wings on the door. Then, of course, you go in here. It's just a carbon copy of Lancer's room. You found 20 rubies in the hole. Unfortunately, that's not a useful currency here. It's homemade recreationally. This is the best room ever. How do you know what I like? I just sort of had a hunch. The Quasimodo of kindness, people. The Quasimodo of kindness? That's so funny. Look for fun. There's salsa buried in the ground here. It's some kind of digging implement, like a spade. Wow, it's better than I remember. I even have my own bed now. Now I don't have to sleep in a hole anymore. I thought you already had a bed. No, that was for the bike. Which is accurate. I think the bike was literally tucked in Chapter 1, so... There's not much to say as far as lore goes in here. I'm just exploring it for the sake of completion. I love that my floor is full of holes. Very nice. It's a very funny room. Lacking lore significance is to be expected, though. And Susie, this is your room. The way he phrases that, it's clearly thought that we would go into Chris's room first. I tried to make it something you'd like, but you can put anything else you want in here too. I really hope you like it. We got axes on the wall, spikes everywhere, beds. We got the magic spell carpet, like the Rude Buster carpet. My own room, huh? The way she phrases that makes it sound like she doesn't have her own room, meaning she either shares it with siblings or with parents, or she just doesn't have her own room at all. Or potentially doesn't have a home, so people think she's homeless. I don't buy that. I think she just lives in like a really small apartment. Like probably sleeps on the couch. I guess that's pretty cool. My own room like this. How long did it take you to do this? Well, since I last saw you two, Man, you're a real weenie, you know that? Conveniently, Rouse gets cut off before he can explain how he made this room. I think she likes it, Chris. Jealous I got the cool room? Look, Chris. Damn, there's everything in here. Pine cones, chalk, moss, jars of salsa, pieces of ice, block crumbs from the toaster, jawbreakers. Oh, and like actual food too. Hey Chris, stop bogarting my snacks. What a strange turn of phrase. Selfishly appropriate or keep. So it's like if I bogarted her snacks, I'd be taking her snacks selfishly. But because Chris isn't actually taking anything, they're just bogarting. Cool, spike bed. Now I can stab myself during the night. Finally, some convenience. This can be read either in a very sad kind of way or in a very silly kind of way. Both work quite well. The way her smile gets smaller when she says I can stab myself. Very concerning. Susie, you didn't get to read the manual, so I put it over here for you. Cool, I'll read it before bed. That'll put me to sleep. It's a clothes drawer full of spiky and dangerous clothing. All the clothes are ripping each other up into shreds. Hell yeah, jealous, Chris. Notably, you can kind of tell, like, looking at the floor, that, like, it's very unreal. Like, it's literally been formed out of the darkness with colors and lines. Like, it has the energy of something that had been artificially created in a hurry. Same with Chris's bedroom. Not much in the way of lore as far as Susie's concerned here. It's pretty much just hinting at her poor home life. It's some decorative moss. Looks delicious. Why the hell does your room get moss? And then, like, much like Susie's room, there's like this blue stuff on one side and then the lines on the other. There's stars up there. Unlike Susie, who has like a more concrete looking window, Chris's window is just sort of blatantly drawn on. But more interesting than any of that is the Deltarune symbol, which has the white angel above, a purple triangle and a blue triangle on the top, and then a downward pointing green triangle. Pretty blatantly meant to symbolize these three being the ones from the prophecy. Of course, this was made by Rouse, so whether that's true or whether Rouse just wants us to think it's true is unclear. Also, it's kind of telling that in the room built for Chris that Rouse thought would be what Chris would want, they have Asriel's bed, or like a very similar bed to Asriel as far as the sheets are concerned, and all of Asriel's trophies, which is very interesting. Very much gives the impression that Chris kind of maybe resented being the lesser sibling to the super popular Asriel. An interesting connotation. It's a bed that's been carefully crafted. It's suitable for a bed inspector. That's so funny. It's a stand for your manual. I thought you might want to keep it here in case you want to read it. It's a shelf. All sorts of keepsakes could be put here. It's a wardrobe full of all sorts of different clothes. You could wear whatever you want. Again, very indicative of the nature of Chris as a character and the kind of dark, depressive vibe they get off. The idea that they have all these clothes, but will only ever wear the one outfit. They have all this space for knickknacks and keepsakes that remind them of precious memories, and they will never put anything on this shelf. It's just very clearly meant to be read in a dark, kind of depressive way. Which makes sense, given all my theories on Chris and the darkness they've had to wade through. So, what do we do now? Feel free to explore town until you're ready to leave. Ha, like we're gonna leave now, right, Chris? How about strawberry cake as a room-warming gift? There's a slice of cake in your fridge, Susie. But it's now cauldron fresh. And now if I go over to our fridge, is there a slice of cake? Damn, there's everything in here. Nope. Bad game. Bad game. Doesn't follow its promises. 3 out of 10 stars. I just noticed the blue light or radiating from below the cauldron. It's like there's blue fire or something. Or blue water or blue shadow. Very interesting. Alright. Back for some more lore playthrough. It's been quite a minute since I started this thing. I had to kind of take a break to work on the character design ranking, which itself took a while. So, I've kind of forgotten what we were doing. I think we still needed to explore the basement of the castle and see the king and stuff. One thing, though, I wanted to mention after looking at the footage of the previous playthrough, or the previous parts of this lore playthrough, specifically of me exploring this little castle town area, and just this chapter in general. Is that not much interesting lore has been discussed so far, if it's felt kind of repetitive and generic. I felt a little bad about that, it feels a little boring considering how hyped up this lore playthrough has been. But ultimately I realized that it's not really a lack of effort on my part so much as it is there's just not much yet to discuss. We're still in old territory, exploring Chris's house. We've been there before. We've explored it before. Exploring, the school. We've been in the school before. Even exploring the castle town is mostly a retread. Most of these are characters we've met before. Most of these are places we've gone before. So most of this is not new lore territory. It's really not until we get to the cyber world that things start to pick up. And the main thing you should try to keep in mind with this lore playthrough of Chapter 2 specifically is that the cyber world provides an incredible opportunity, especially for those of us willing to really dive deep and overanalyze every tiny detail, because the cyber world represents the internet. And not just any internet, but the internet of this world, of the Deltarune world. Which means that the information within, the characters, the ads, the everything, give us insight into the society and culture of this setting. And if we look close enough, we may be able to discover more about the nature of monster society, as well as human society, and what the balance is between the two. Are monsters the dominant race in this reality? Are humans still the dominant one? Do they live in peace? Do they have conflict? What is the nature of the society of this world? There's so many questions to be found, and so many questions to be, investigated. And the internet is literally the best place to be looking for that sort of thing. Now, obviously, because the internet is down, we don't get as much data as we could, but we still get way more data than you'd ever get from almost any of these other towns, short of literally turning the library portion of the library into a dark world. The cyber world's probably the best we're going to get. So that's fun and that's interesting. And that's just something to keep in mind when we analyze these things, is that there's just so much subtext to be discovered. But yeah, we'll get to that shortly. It's violently protecting the jail. A little goofy goober. Good design, but a dubious fellow. Then we have Golden Sam. I'm Golden Sam. Yep, that you are. Then we have the Kings, although you'll notice they all have cat ears now, which is funny. Oh, and whiskers. We're still behind bars for some reason, but it's okay. We've grown to love this hellish place where we dress as animals. Which is, I think, a reference to these guys. We decided to dress as kings. It's cultural exchange. So yeah, these guys are wearing crowns now, and these guys have whiskers and animal ears. This is a nice prison. Thank you. Side note, I do wish these guys would be outside of their cages. They seem like such interesting little minor characters. Like, it wouldn't be that hard to give them full designs and a little bit of dialogue, I feel. But, I don't know. Maybe I'm nitpicking. And then we have the king. He's got, like, a hamster wheel, a giant water bottle, and at the top of the cage, there's something on the ground there. I can't tell if that's a blanket or a rock or what. But yeah, let's see what the king has to say. Ah, the Lighteners. Have you come to humiliate me? No. Mr. King, the Lighteners returned everyone here safely. If you're willing to reconsider, then... What? Live in a kingdom ruled by you? The Lighteners' little patsy? Staying in this cell is far less humiliating. Now, if you'll excuse me, my giant hamster wheel is getting cold. It's funny because it really does showcase that King is really just a sad, broken version of Lancer. Like, he's a goofy goober underneath it all. He's just kind of been worn down by time and depression and darkness and angst. He's, you know, very much meant to be a parallel to Asgore in that regard. They're both goofy goobers at heart. Unfortunately, circumstances has turned them into darker shadows of their former selves. We have nothing to discuss. By the way, is my son happy? Look at the way his face is animated. It gets all crumpled up, but there's also like these cracks in his face. I mean, I assume it's supposed to be like wrinkles. Still, sad. Like you care. You were gonna throw him off a cliff. Your prejudice made... Your prejudice made my bluff too effective, I see. This is some funny little gaslighting. Besides, even if I threw him, he would just bounce. My son is a bouncy little pumpkin. Aw, cute. We're done talking to you. Look at the king's cutie little face. He's such a silly little doofus. Yeah. It's interesting because it's interesting for some reason. I'm forgetting what it was now, though. Oh yeah, it's interesting because, like, there's implications, or at least subtle hints from Toby Fox and elsewhere, that the dark fountains make people worse. Like, being too exposed to them, it intensifies your attributes. Like, they discuss it with Queen in Chapter 2. We'll get to that soon, and I'll probably mention it then. But they mention how, like, Queen was always a tyrant, but she became much worse after the Dark Fountain appeared. And it seems pretty clear to me that the king was also always a bit of a bitter, resentful old man who hated the Lightners, but it was only after the Dark Fountain appeared that he went full megalomaniac and tried to take over the kingdom and start threatening people, including his son. And clearly, at least in his mind, he never intended to hurt Lancer. But it also shows how mad he'd been driven, that he wasn't really thinking things through. Because that threat only works, that bluff, if if the Lightners cared about Lancer. But the king's whole shtick is that he thinks the Lightners don't care about Darkners. So if the bluff worked, that would prove that he's wrong about Lightners. And if it didn't work, which it shouldn't given what he believes, then he'd be risking his son's life. So I think that whole bluff, I believe him when he says it's a bluff, but what I don't believe is that he thought it through at all. It's very clear that he has no idea, or at least at the time, he really was kind of out of his mind. Bit of a mental episode. Still, it's interesting. I find the king a fascinating little character. It's not often you have like a goofy goober character given a dark reflection, It's an interesting concept. I think that's it for the lore in the castle town at the moment. Most of this has been discussed, like most of these characters were discussed in Chapter 2, or in my Chapter 1 lore playthrough, I should say. So there's not a ton more for me to discuss. The sheer quantity of Deltarune symbols all over this place is interesting. Like, it's above the door, it's on the ground below the door. When you walk away, the whole castle almost looks like it takes the shape of the Deltarune, with the wings and such. It's quite fascinating. And the fact that there's this grass here is also interesting, because it almost seems to stand out compared to the paper-thin buildings and such. It makes you wonder if there was like leaves or grass or something to that effect scattered throughout the place. I think I already looked at all the rest of the castle town. Popped in here and there. Only things I'm noticing now is I don't know if I mentioned like the way the shops look. The bakery looks like Top Chef's head. The cafe looks like a cup with a plate on top with more cups on top of that. Huh. I wonder if that's supposed to be like a marshmallow and hot cocoa. That would be very, Chris-like. Or Rousey-like. Or Azrael-like. Take your pick. And this place, it kind of looks like a face, with the buttons being eyes and the door being a mouth. Especially with the top part looking like a little hat. With little sewing needles sticking out. And it's all stitched together just like Sham. Party dojo. It's a party, so there's a disco ball, but it's a dojo, so there's a fist. And it looks like it's almost shooting an energy wave at the disco ball or something. And it's got like little banners that look like lava lamps. So that's fun. Very 70s aesthetic. Alright, I think that's it for the castle town at this stage as far as lore is concerned. So we can progress a little bit. Wait, Chris, we're leaving? But we just got here. Man, I don't want to go do our group project. Oh, you two have homework? Well. Susie, Chris, you ought to do it right away. School is important. This is an interesting detail. Because, on the one hand, the surface level reading is that Rousey is a teacher's pet bookworm who wants them to be good students. On a deeper level, though, if you're working with the idea that Rousey has seen all this stuff coming, thanks to the shadow crystals, like he's foreseen the future somehow, then it almost feels like he's kicking them out of the castle town in order to ensure they're in the right place to begin the Chapter 2 adventure. which is interesting. An interesting possibility, anyway. It could also comment on how, Asriel's often viewed as a goody two-shoes, so maybe that's kind of bleeding over into Rousey. I banish you from this kingdom until you start your project. Ah, fine. I'll do it, jeez. Susie, don't worry. I'll go and help you too. Wait, Lancer, perhaps you shouldn't. Too late, kind boy. Friendship form. Kind boy. Was it the green soul that represents kindness in Undertale? An interesting thought. Also, he calls this his friendship form? Yeah. So he reverts back into a playing card and adds himself to your inventory, and he calls that his friendship form. Now, this could just be a silly thing Lance is doing, like, oh, it's his friendship form because he can take it to travel with his friends. So that's a valid possibility. It could also be a case of this having some important connection to the nature of Darkners. Because Darkners are mundane objects brought to life by the power of a dark fountain. So clearly they're infused with some sort of power. But yet he calls his normal form his friendship form. Potentially implying that that's like the form that Darkners usually befriend Lightners in. Because dark fountains are kind of atypical. Normally Darkners, in their mundane forms, are connected to Lightners due to them being used as mundane objects. Lancer as a playing card, for example. Or it's just meant to be a silly little throwaway line that has no deeper meaning. What? Where'd you go? Don't worry, I just entered your inventory. I'll just be hanging out in Chris's pocket. Wow, Lance, you remembered their name. Don't know what that means, but okay. One thing that's slightly obnoxious about Susie's character is that she's very blatantly ignorant of everything going on around her. Like, anything that would warrant investigation or inquiry or reflection, she doesn't. She just takes everything in stride and doesn't question anything. Which is useful for a storytelling perspective, because if she wasn't, so go with the flow, then she'd probably ask questions that would reveal answers that would, spoil the plot. I suspect there's certain basic facts about the nature of the Dark World that the only reason Toby Fox can kind of keep them secret from us is because Chris is a silent protag, Susie doesn't care enough to ask questions, and Rousey is clearly more informed than he should be, and is being intentionally obtuse about what information he provides. So Toby's very much written this to be a narrative where we are given as few concrete answers about the world building as possible. Which is kind of interesting, because that's very much the opposite of how things worked in Undertale. In Undertale, Toby was not shy about giving us lore. The game literally starts with a lore dump, as we're given the history of monsters and humans, and kind of given some, not the deepest lore, but some lore to kind of set up the universe. And given the context we get in Undertale, it pretty heavily implies that is taking place in a very Earth-like world, complete with anime and tsundere planes and all the typical stuff that the real world has. But with this game, it's left a little more obscure. Since it's a parallel to Undertale, that pretty heavily suggests that this is probably also taking place in an Earth-like world. But even that has to just sort of be assumed. There's not a ton of hard data on the fact. Which is yet again another case of lore being obscured by Toby Fox in a way where it's like it's something that everyone in the setting already knows but never talks about. Like the nature of human and monster relationships. Like, what is the status of this, because like humans and monsters getting along is not the norm. The whole point of Undertale was that they did not get along. So like leaving questions like that unanswered feels very intentional. And it makes it seem like there's some pretty important answers that would change how we view this story. Fear not, I too shall assisteth. We're good. Aha, quite. We, as a team, art good. Rules became a key item, even though no one wanted that. And then there's Rules card. It's interesting that these are the two who get brought along, because, you know, with Lancer, he's obviously like Susie's best friend in the Dark World. He's kind of like her little brother in a way. And also within the context of, you know, the prophecy, they do mention a prince from the dark, and Lancer is a prince of a kingdom, so it does feel almost like it's intentionally leaving it obscure regarding who the prophecy is about by including a few bonus characters who are probably red herrings, but are just they fit the criteria just well enough to where it leaves us questioning things. So like that's why I feel Lancer was included. He feels like almost a plot device character. But Rules card, and that's part of why I struggle to really get into Lancer as a character, because he's a cute little guy, but he has no depth. He's very simplistic, which means that it's hard for me to be invested in him or his relationships with Susie or Rusty or Chris, because it feels like there's just not much going on there. But I digress. Then there's Rules card joining the party for this adventure, and that's where things get interesting, because in many ways, if Undertale and Deltarune are parallels, there's an argument to be made that Lancer is something of a parallel to Sans, and Rules card a parallel to Papyrus. Lancer is the first character you meet in the Dark World, and he's a shadowy figure, just like how Sans was. They're both presented as threatening at first, but then it's revealed they're just short little silly guys. And even though they're technically your enemies, they're also kind of actually working to help keep you safe. It's a parallel that is not lost on me. But then there's also Rules card, who is the taller, more technically straight-laced, because, you know, Papyrus takes capturing humans seriously. Rules card takes his job as Lord of Puzzles seriously, of being the head minion of the evil empire. In many ways, they both have, like, similar aspirations of being, you know, Papyrus wants to be the head of the royal guard, and, you know, Rules card wants to be the head minion. So, like, they have similar aspirations. And even when comparing, like, short, goofy guy with tall, straight-laced guy who's also kind of goofy, Rules card and Papyrus end up kind of filling the same niche. And they both are also really into puzzles, as you'll recall, with Rules card being really bad at puzzles, but but trying anyway, and Papyrus being somewhat better at puzzles, but point stands, they're both very much into puzzles. And it's just kind of an interesting dynamic, because it's like, what is the implication of that for Rules card and Lancer? Because that almost would make you think that Lancer is supposed to be this grand, serious character in the grand scheme of things. Which could make sense if he's the one from the prophecy. It's just, yeah, it's interesting. It makes you, because like I think the Rules card, Lancer, Sans, Papyrus parallels are by design. I'm just not so certain what those designs are building towards. I will also join. Oh, that walking animation. The original Star Walker became a key item. God bless the original Star Walker. There's nothing to be gleaned from Star Walker, I'm afraid. He's something of a reference to, like, Skywalker, but I don't know. There's nothing to be gleaned. He's just a goofy little guy. If there's lore to be gleaned from Star Walker, I don't have the skills to deduce it at this time. Alright, enough already. Let's get going. Good luck today, Chris. See you soon. A lot sooner than we expect, eh, Rousey? What's funny is that you can go right back up. Oh, come back when you finished your homework. What's the point of having a room if you can't slack off in it? That's funny. I always forget how to open my inventory. Here we go. Lancer, ho ho! I'm a tough boy. Treat me like one of your items. This is rather famously a almost direct quote from Earthbound. You click on him and it makes a splat sound, and also it puts little bars above Susie and Chris. Also, I love how well animated Lancer is in your inventory, and yet he still slides around on the ground as if it's Toby Fox's way of saying, yes, I could animate him well. I choose not to. I choose to give him wheelies on his shoes. Thou gazeth upon a man most handsometh, this daringest genius, adoreth beyondeth all. Hey! This is actually a somewhat interesting little detail. His dialogue actually gets cut off there, as you'll notice. It starts to stretch off screen, but what's funny is that the dialogue actually still exists in the game files. Yeah, he says, I had to find it, took me a second, but the full line is, hey, let me speaketh, or yeah, speakest, you know, you get the gist. This is a funny little detail because it implies that he's aware, like, if you look at it through the meta level, the meta narrative, it implies that he's aware that his dialogue is being cut off, which is strange. It implies he has a meta awareness that is very Sans-like. But in the regular narrative, the only way I can really interpret that is that Chris, like, stops paying attention before his little monologue ends. So, a funny little detail. You cannot use Rules card, though. And Star Walker, the original Star Walker, and he's just up there in the top left corner for some reason. Yeah. That is not any different. Nothing but garbage noise. I don't know if I noticed, but it's so strange how the light beam retracts and grows and like widens and closes. It's like, what's going on? It almost makes it feel like there's some hole in the universe and that it's not. And if you think about it, this is the only place in the games or in the chapters where you can just go back and forth between light and dark worlds. In every other every other location, you have to seal a dark fountain. So that, and this light beam isn't there at the start of chapter 1, implying that this is somehow Rousey's doing, which would imply he has a greater deal of power over this realm than he lets on. An interesting thought. Well, damn. Guess we gotta do our project. Sigh. At least we got Lancer, right? Lancer? Where are you? Damn, guess he skipped out after all, huh? Yeah. Case and point of Susie being just blissfully ignorant of the workings of the world around her and not looking any deeper. So where should we do this? What? The library? This is one of the rare instances where Chris talks to Susie and we don't get to hear it. An interesting detail, because that implies that Chris directs us towards the library no matter what. That's not something that we, the player, choose. That's something Chris just says. We don't get to choose that. And there's so many layers to interpreting that. In the regular narrative, the only explanation would just be, oh, Noelle asked them to come by later, and Chris remembers that. And cares about Noelle's feelings, and so arranges that to happen. In the meta-narrative, I don't know if it has any significance in the meta-narrative, But perhaps in the deeper levels of the regular narrative, if Chris is aware of the time loop, then maybe they know they need to go to that dark world. Or maybe Chris, if you subscribe to Chris as the Night theory, then Chris wants to go there because they are the ones who created the Dark Fountain. Although why Chris would create these dark fountains and then also actively choose to seal them is a little dubious. I digress, though. Well, alright. Can't go back there for now. That's interesting. Lukewarm, tepid, refreshingly cool. Now, I don't think I need to really check all this stuff. This used to be your brother's locker. It's your locker. It's empty. It does not seem a coincidence to me that the two lockers closest to Toriel's classroom are the ones belonging to her children. She probably had that arranged. Also, Chris's locker being empty is interesting. I never did do anything with that whole hyperdodecahedron thing, because that's clearly a reference to the whatever it's called. The idea of higher dimensions, which is clearly potentially quite relevant in the world of Deltarune. But like, is it a refined aged apple bouquet? It's a picture of your brother and you playing video games. Your brother's using the knockoff controller. Ooh. I don't know if I talked about this in chapter 1 or if this was even an option in chapter 1. Because I think it talks about Halloween in that chapter. But this line has some connotations in the context of my Chris is possessed theory. Because having it be like, oh yeah, Azrael has the knockoff controller, implying they have an inferior degree of control over Chris. That's an interesting thought. And it kind of, I don't know, it just sort of hints at the whole idea that like Chris and Azrael, they both have controllers over their shared body. I don't know. I just find that potentially some very neat foreshadowing. It's an orange. It's unknown if it's safe for teachers to eat this. Kids' books, some of them used to be yours. It's a primitive drawing of your mom. The throne of the gods grows higher. Is this hubris? Truly one of the greatest jokes in video game history. That is so funny. And once again, all the clocks are busted. Jockey to memorabilia. Everyone's gone, including Tem. Interestingly, Temmie will be here after we go to the cyber world. Also, this clock is a reverse version of the other clock, I think. Let me double check that. Yep, they're opposites. What was the clock up here? Pointing straight down. I bet the clock in here is pointing straight up. Not much to say about this environment just yet, because nothing that I didn't say in chapter 1. Library. Here we have the scared donut guy, and the snail guy, and Undyne, who is still supernaturally strong. Like, literally bench pressing a car. What this says for the nature of the Undertale Deltarune reality split is unclear, but this does prove that, at least in this reality, monsters are as physically powerful as humans, if not more so. So that's interesting. The car horns will occasionally honk out little memorable themes like the Metaton theme. I was just directing traffic as normal when a little dog drove one of those toy cars into the middle of the street and started doing donuts. In the chaos, all the cars in town got jammed up. Thankfully, no one was hurt. But ordinary citizens like you gotta get out of here. I got some heavy lifting to do. Don't interrupt me when I'm lifting. There's so many cars. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 cars at minimum. Assuming, Notably, if you interacted with the Eggman, like the guy behind the tree, if you talk to either this car or this car, it doesn't matter which one, it'll say some secret dialogue. Looks like a car. There's even a man inside this one. He waves at you happily. It doesn't say that if you didn't talk to the Eggman. And it's interesting that it's not even set which car he's in. If you like this time I talked to that car, but you can talk to this car too, and he'll be in that one instead. Which is fascinating. Because in a world where everything is static, where it doesn't matter what you do in your playthroughs, it won't change anything. He changed. At least a little bit. So that's interesting. I heard a dog was doing donuts, so I sped over here. But I just learned donuts is actually the name of a special attack for cars. Why is my life stuck in a loop of doughy disappointment? My life, like a donut, is stuck in a loop of doughy disappointment. Yeah, this is the guy who famously buys like a donut from Muffet in Undertale, and then he's terrified because of one reason or another of her. I forget the specifics of it. Then we have the snail guy. He's on the snail farm run by Napstablik's family. That's his only real character trait. He's also the only one here with a green car. Traffic's moving at a snail's pace. Ho ho ho, that's your reference. I love snails. Could today get any better? Wow, my first traffic jam. I can't help but feel a sense of pride. Alright, that's it out here. Let us continue. I mean, the whole Undyne being this strong, I mean, we knew she could like lift whole boulders in Undertale, which was always a bit confusing because it implied that even though Undyne was that physically strong, humans were still a bigger threat, which raises the question of how powerful are humans in the Undertale reality that someone like Undyne wouldn't pose a threat to them, you know? It's interesting. The power scaling there is curious. Because like a car weighs like 2 tons. Like 4,000 plus pounds that she's just casually, lifting. Yeah, that's crazy. Almost as crazy as there being no sidewalk connecting the door to the place. It's like, why is there just grass in front of this door? What the heck? Alright, we're here. School, goddamn project. Books. Goddamn crazy about them. Hey, Chris, where the hell is everybody? Interesting that she looks behind the counter, subtly hinting that, like, someone should at least be here. Something seems kind of off. Like, Susie's starting to notice something. She starts to notice that there's something might be wrong in the world. Screw it, let's just go play space pinball in the computer lab. And then she immediately loses track. She just instantly jumps tracks and just forgets entirely. On the one hand, I get it. You gotta tell your story. You can't have the characters questioning things that'll give away the story. But still, it is a little frustrating. Huh? And you'll notice that the darkness actively, sucks the light out of the room. This happened in Chapter 1. Inside the closet. And that music playing, it's the spooky door theme, I think. Yeah, so it's like, once again, referencing potentially something that was referenced by the Gaster files is, photon readings negative. Not just there's not photons, but that there's anti-photons. Photons that actively destroy light, that nullify light. So, not just regular darkness. So it's an interesting attribute of the dark fountains. Chris, you don't think this could be another dark world? Well, guess this means we can't start a project. Let me check something real quick. I was just double checking what the other dialogue option was when you speak to the king. If you say, "Hell yeah, we're here to mock you," Susie's like, "Hell yeah, eat it, old man." And then she's like, "Hey, wait, why does he get a giant water thing?" And then the king's like, acts like a goober and is like, "Jealous?" And then suckles on the water thing. It's some silly nonsense. But I wanted to look that up before this because this is another split dialogue option. Unless, Chris, if there's a dark fountain in there, you could seal it. And it'll turn back into the computer lab, right? So what's it gonna be, Chris? Let's go! We could use the computer lab at my house. Let me just check. If you choose, let's go! Susie says, "Yeah, let's just drop the act. Our last adventure was great, right? I couldn't stop thinking about having another. I don't know what's in there, but we can't live if we don't find out, right?" So, just some pretty standard stuff. And then, of course, if you choose the other option, we can use the computer at my house. I always go with this option because it's funnier. Although it's interesting, because something that's always fascinating to debate is like which option Chris actually wants to say. Because either way you go into the dark world, doesn't matter which choice you pick. So Chris ends up in there anyway, but it does raise the question of which one they'd prefer. And I can only assume they'd go with let's go. Not only because context clues suggest they like hanging out with Susie and going on adventures, but also there's exclamation points. And stuff in the Snowgrave route almost seems to imply, like there's like one dialogue prompt that kind of implies that the more exclamative, the more likely it is that it's something Chris actually would say. Whereas at other times when you make Chris say something that they don't actually agree with, they sound weird about it. Like their tone is weird. Like they sound like they don't agree with what they're saying. So it seems canonically likely that Chris would go with let's go. We can use the computer at my house. I love how her sprite reverts to her normal one. Chris, you're right. Like, you said a correct fact, but you made a mistake. The mistake of knowing me. Because when I see a big pit, all I want to do is jump in. That's a red flag for your mental health, Susie, if your instincts when you see a big pit are to jump into it. And as long as you're with me, I'm dragging you in too. Come on, Chris. Oh, and you see that? One of the sparkles flew away, and that was Rule's card jumping out. This is new. And we're back in control. And if we go into key items, Rule's card is gone. And if you hover over Lancer, ho ho ho! Rules jumped out of your pocket. How dadcrobatic. Lesser. Because he's the lesser dad. So that's a funny little detail. Something I need to that you kind of have to remember when doing this chapter is they have to remember to check in and see what Lancer's thoughts are on things. He's very much like, like you can't actually call anyone in this dark world, but having Lancer in your pocket's kind of like the equivalent of being able to call Papyrus in Undertale. And these little squares connected by lines are very like, ooh, it's digital. These are like nodes being connected by wires and circuitry and etc. Oh, and I just noticed the lights flashing below on this, the yellow and green. Interesting. Beyond that, though, this is very similar to the area that you land in when you jump into the Castletown Dark World in Chapter 1, where it's like a platform hovering in darkness, and then you go to the right. And then, oh, you can see a plug hanging there. Spooky. Dark World, question mark? Can't click recruits. I can click storage. I'll go ahead and save. Yeah, I guess I'll put it here. Alright, and I think I'll pause the recording there. Alrighty, I am back for more of the lore playthrough. There might be a faint sound in the background of my neighbor's car. Hopefully you can't hear it. But yeah, alright, let's continue. Interesting that there's a plug right there. Oh, it's slightly moving too. How creepy. Yeah. Alright, let's continue. Interesting, the ground is damaged here, implying a battle has occurred. More plugs. A plug boy. The wires. The wires. So this plug boy is scared of the wires. Okay. Interesting. More damage. What's funny is, who would have been doing this damage? Because it's like, yeah, the wires are controlled by Queen. She's turning her minions into slaves or whatever. Namely, the plug boys, mostly. But, like, then presumably, like, presumably the plug boys didn't do this damage. Presumably it was the wire, the wear wires. But if that's the case, because like clearly the attacks from the plugs themselves don't do any damage to the ground. These electric attacks, they're clearly not doing this kind of damage. So that kind of raises the question of who could. Was it other cyberworld denizens trying to fight back against Queen, like the Sweet Cap'n Cakes? Or, the more fun explanation, was this done by Noelle or Birdley, fighting the Darkners? We know Lightners are powerful, and especially Noelle, so could be. So yeah. Oh, and then like these look like power outlets, like where you'd plug in whatever it's called, like an Ethernet cable. So that's interesting. An awful lot of these guys, aren't there? Ooh, gets even more damaged over here. Lots of plugs. Yeah, this looks like this is the scene of an extensive battle. Everyone was... Something bad happened to everyone, potentially implying everyone was killed by, say, Noelle, or everyone was turned into a werewire by the Queen. More plug boys. This whole area is even more trashed, implying that we're getting closer to the center of the battlefield, which implies that the source of all this destruction should be nearby, and these plug boys don't look like they're the cause. And since werewires largely use laser beams that kind of seem to run along the surface of the ground, they get their power from the wires, it almost seems unlikely that this would be the damage. But there's not really, like, are these scorch marks on the ground here? I'm not sure. Everyone else has been something. Save us. She's going to... Thing is, it doesn't make sense for them to be scared of Queen. Queen doesn't kill Darkners. She doesn't leave craters everywhere. This is further evidenced by the fact that, because like if this was happening all over the Cyber City, these characters getting transformed and battling and destroying the area, we'd find more places like this. We'd find more craters and damaged walkways and terrified citizens. Because the Queen's doing this all over the city. And yet, we don't find it. Implying there's something here that's unique that doesn't appear elsewhere. And I think we're about to find out exactly what that is. Yeah. And you notice that they say she. So it could be referencing Queen, but it could also be referencing her. And her face is covered in by her hair, her eyes hidden in shadow, much like how her eyes are obscured or covered, or like, being all glowy in Snowgrave. And she's standing right near, like right on top of a crater, potentially being where she just blasted some poor Darkner. Potentially. Yeah. I think the implication, you can read it either way. Yeah, you can read it either way. You could say these craters were caused by Queen, but I think it makes more sense to me that this was done by Noelle, especially given what we find out in the Snowgrave round and what she's capable of. I think when she's panicked or pushed into a corner, she can access some pretty spooky power. Susie? Cool that you're here. Just wait, get out of here before it's too late. Noelle! Hell of a study session. God, she has such good music. It's interesting because people point out that Queen already knows that Noelle is really powerful. So it's possible the reason Queen knows that is because she had to fight her so thoroughly in this area. Like, it could be that the only reason, like, that Queen was trying to capture Noelle, but failed repeatedly, and like that these craters and damage to the environment is a byproduct of those failed attempts. And it was only when Noelle was distracted by us appearing that she finally got captured. And she says here, hell of a study session. Now, Berdly and Noelle came to the library for a study session. And while Susie and Chris just arrived, there's no reason that Queen would know they were coming. None that we know of, anyway. But yeah, it implies that when she says hell of a study session, she's just referring to Berdly and Noelle arriving. That was their original purpose for coming to this place. Which could suggest that... Yeah, I think that pretty clearly suggests that she's saying that this battlefield and all the craters and Noelle getting captured, all of that was part of the quote-unquote study session that her and Berdly had come here to do. I think that's what she's implying. So, ignoring meta explanations where it's like, oh, she's just making a joke about how we came here to study. I think that's what's being implied here. So, further evidence for the Noelle and maybe Berdly are powerful enough to lay waste to this area. Who the hell are you? I am known as serial number Q5U4EX7YY2E9N. I've actually spent a fair amount of time researching serial numbers, trying to figure out if there was any hidden meaning in this serial number. I was like looking into laptops and what their serial numbers mean, like does it tell you anything? And while serial numbers theoretically can tell you stuff, I didn't turn up anything regarding her serial number. I think it's just a bunch of random numbers. Oh, also Q, U, E, E, and N are in there. So she just takes the letters and says, oh, Queen. So, pretty silly. But you foolish children may call me Queen. I like how her name's in quotation marks because it's a nickname technically. Someone was pointing out that she technically, like I was saying in my character design thing that my ranking, that she has one blue leg and one white leg in most of her sprites. And someone else argued, oh no, they're both white, but one of them's in shadow. And I'm not sure I buy that. Also, I think it looks better having one blue leg than both white legs, so that's my 2 cents. Like, we're gonna call you Queen. Q5U37 Queen. Oh man. I remember being quite amused by Queen in my first playthrough of Chapter 2. She's quite entertaining. And say what you will about Toby Fox, well, some of his characters are a bit shallow. Even when they're shallow, they're hilarious. Like, Lancer is not that interesting. Queen's only a little bit more interesting. But both of them are hilarious, so it more than makes up for it. Well, look, Queen, we're not children. Teens are merely big children, and adults are even bigger children. Stupid to big stupid. I love the the scaling on that. Also, I'm just now noticing that, like, her big stupid doodle is using mixels. Which is when there's different sized pixels. That's so funny. How many sprite artists out there are never going to look at this scene again because it drives them insane, all the mixels. And adults are, yeah. Teens are merely big children, adults are even bigger children. I'm inclined to agree. Doesn't that make you a child too, then? No, I am a computer. Smart. Smart to smart. Nice. I love her little, like, face plate screen showing words and other things. That's so much fun. And the blue lipstick. Just, what a great design. Yeah. I think Queen got, like, high A tier in my character design ranking. Like, she's just very fun. Oh, this music is so good. Also, I continue to support her judgment, which is that computers are superior to humans. At least when it comes to, ethical things. Computer. Well, thank you for the stimuli, but I must leave now. Goodbye. I love also her punctuation, by the way. The way she'll just be all caps, or not all caps, because Papyrus, I think, is all caps. She just capitalizes every letter. Well, thank you for the stimuli, but I must leave now. Goodbye. Wait, why'd you capture Noelle? I would have captured you too, but I ran out of cages. Why the capturing? So that she may become my willing peon. Peon, if I recall correctly, just to double check, is a term meaning like a servant. Usually refers to a person subject to peonage, any form of wage labor, financial exploitation, coercive economic practices, or policy in which the victim or a laborer has little control over employment or economic conditions. So while obviously you could have... Yeah, oh, that's interesting. So I guess that means that, it was originally a Mexican word meaning an agricultural worker in servitude to his landlord. So it's actually a sort of... Instead of, like, being, like, a serf or a peasant, the way you would be in a normal, traditional kingdom, she quite literally is using a capitalist version of that. That's what a peon is. I had no idea. I didn't know that was the origin of this. It's domination in a more... like in a capitalist framework instead of domination in an... feudal framework. So that's interesting. I mean, that's always been kind of one of the underlying things that makes the cyber world different from the Card Kingdom. Is like both have a quote unquote, you know, nobility, like they have a king or a queen, but the Cyber Kingdom has always followed a more, or Cyber City has always followed a more like modern kind of structuring with cities and salesmen and you know, yeah, typical modern capitalist society rather than the feudal peasant-backed society of the Card Kingdom. So that's pretty funny. In my quest for world domination, my willing peon in my quest for world domination. Also, I probably mentioned this in passing at least once in the first chapter lore playthrough, but this is one of the few times we see a depiction of the planet of Earth in Deltarune. And it happens even less often in Undertale, if at all. I wonder if this is how similar this looks to the Earthbound Earth symbol. Because the Earthbound logo, because Earth in the name, has the Earth symbol on it. And I'm sure that was what Toby was referencing. Okay, yeah. I might remember to show this on screen. I might also forget, and if I forget, I apologize. But yeah, it looks extremely similar. Like, it's too similar, I think, to be a coincidence. I mean, it might not be exactly... I don't know, man. I think they look similar enough that it's almost certainly a reference. And I think the Earthbound logo itself is like... Yeah, no, it's not too dissimilar from the Earthbound logo. And the only reason, and part of the reason at least, that I think that is because the home screen in Mother is very red, and these Earths are red, so kind of reminds me of that. But I digress. As far as lore is concerned, though, this is potentially one of the few times we get to see what the planet looks like in the Deltarune universe. Nothing really to deduce here. It's also, I guess, technically unclear which parts are the oceans and which parts are the land. Like, I kind of assumed the red bits were continents and the white and the black was the ocean. But I guess technically you could argue that the black is the continents and the reds are the oceans. It's starting to look like Gaster upside down from me staring at it so long. So, like a zoom in on Gaster's face, which is like 93.5% not what it is. So that's pretty funny. But yeah. So she wants to dominate the world in order to make things easier for Lightners. I don't think there's anything too interesting there. The king also wanted to do that. Also, maybe I will make her face into a robot one. That's just hilarious. I just nothing to say there. What? Why? Seems cool. God bless Queen. Yeah. Okay, just making sure my mic's recording. Well, forget it, dude. Nobody's turning anybody's face into a robot. Could that be a statement of animus dissension? I am looking up those words. Not that I don't understand what she's saying, but I'm actually curious if those are real words or if she's just making up nonsense. Animus. That's... Yeah, no, I don't think that's a word. Not with that spelling. A-N-I-M... It's like Animouse. Yeah, that's not a word, I don't think. Like, it's supposed to be like similar to animosity. It's like unanimous. Is dissension even a word? Okay, yeah, dissension. Disagreement that leads to discord. Okay, so that's a real word. I mean, I knew it was a word, but I wasn't sure if that spelling was correct. So, unanimous dissension. Yeah, so unanimous means everybody. Whereas, I guess the joke is that she is saying that Susie is standing out and being weird. And so instead of everybody, it's just Susie. Or she's pretending to use overly complex words to sound smart, even though animus is not really a word. Wow. That's really funny. Because it kind of, that in a way, that kind of hints at the fact that Queen's not exactly as knowledgeable as she thinks she is. Huh? You want to fight, loser? Yes! Yes already! Yes! Look at those blur frames. That's crazy looking. Oh, then bye. Wait a goddamn second. I have no time for such frivolities, and would kick your ass. But perhaps someone else could entertain you. Enjoy your assimilation. Yeah, that little animation of the Plug Boys getting turned into werewires is still very cool. Like, it was cool when I first saw it in this game, and it's still cool now. It's just such a moment of, like, high definition animation in a series that usually has pretty, charming yet clunky animation. Lancer sliding around on his wheelies type stuff. So to have suddenly, like, this really, like, high detailed transformation sequence to just suddenly happen makes it much more visceral. It makes you go, oh, that's upsetting. Werewires swung in. All right, it's been a while since I've done like a fight in a lore playthrough. So let me just pull up its wiki page to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Okay, yeah, so there's some interesting stuff here. We'll start by checking, as always. Oh, they're already tired. That's interesting. They start off tired. That itself could be commentary on how, because like the Plug Boys are like the default citizenry. They're the people who are working constantly. So, and Queen already described us as peons. So she probably views them similarly. And peons are literally like poorly paid, like overworked labor. So that peon lore kind of carrying over into the werewires being tired by default is kind of interesting. And it'll explain why she even bothers with the mind control thing, because it makes them more powerful, which is probably necessary given how tired and small and pathetic they are. Check. Werewire. Controlled by the Queen's wire, it's sleepwalking through a nightmare. I mean, that's horrific, and it adds further horror to these creatures on general principle. Although the idea of sleepwalking through a nightmare, that could have greater connotations in the lore. Just not like it's connected to anything, but like it's kind of tying in some overarching imagery, perhaps. Because Jevel mentioned that Chris and Co are gonna, a nightmare will awaken in their hearts. And Chris, they you could argue they're sort of sleepwalking through a nightmare with them being possessed, where they're awake but not quite, where they're going through fantasy worlds that are almost like a dream, but they're also a nightmare that they're forced to walk through. Like there's some stuff there. Later on, as far as any other interesting like flavor text, later on when Susie, Rousey, and Noelle unlock being able to act with S action, R action, and in action. When Susie tries her action, she yanks on the wire, whereas when Rousey tries an action, it says he sang a snake charming song to the wire. So that's interesting. The idea that he has a singing ability, like we've already known that he could sing a lullaby to put people to sleep, but that's kind of taking it further, isn't it? Because it's like he could actually potentially mind control people, or at least hypnotize them with his singing, which is interesting. It also makes the fact that we're sung a song at the end of every chapter, right when Chris takes over of their body again, also further interesting. So, yeah, there's some interesting connotations there. Beyond that, there's an unused fight where where the Werewire and the Mouse team up, and the flavor text says they swung down like string superheroes. So that's interesting. And if Noelle tries to use her in action on a Werewire, it says Noelle pulled out the plug like a fairy light. That is an interesting little description. Yeah, I was just double checking to make sure I know what a fairy light is, but it's basically Christmas lights. I'm pretty sure, like taking a glance at it, because like Christmas lights are little lights spread out on wires, and so you could say, oh, it's like fairies. So yeah, I guess that's the origin of fairy lights. So yeah, just another Christmas reference for Noelle. How typical. Zig. Oh god, I lost it. Oh god. These guys are kind of tough. Also, I just noticed, Chris has 120 health, Susie has 140. That's because we are level 2 now. You go up a level after sealing a fountain, from what we can tell. Because you go up a level specific, like Noelle's the oddity in that regard. She goes up once her title changes at any point in chapter 2. Like she starts at level 1 and then becomes level 2 randomly. I guess you could argue that maybe she leeches some power from Chris and Susie, and maybe Rouse. Also, it's kind of interesting that Rouse levels like a player character, like a Lightner, instead of leveling like Darkners do. Although I guess we don't know much about how Darkners level up, if they even can level up. So that's interesting. But yeah, so we're level 2 at this point. And we presumably become level 3 after we seal the Cyberworld Dark Fountain. That's something I'd like to try and remember to check, because I don't actually remember. Actually, give me 1 second. Oops, I forgot to unpause the recording. But yeah, all I found was that, they level up to level 3 after you seal the Cyberworld Dark Fountain. Also, I'm curious about what happens if you die in this fight, so I'm intentionally dying. So I'm gonna do that real quick. Ah. Okay. Well, this is I think, the first appearance of the alternate game over screen. Not only is it more stylized and looks all fancy, aesthetically it's like split into chunks. Some are white, some are gray. It's an interesting aesthetic. I mentioned in my music ranking video that if this whole screen feels fake, like someone's trying to make me feel like I'm a protagonist with real agency when I don't. But I digress. Notably, we have Susie here saying, "Come on, that all you got?" Notably, she only can say, she and Rouse have different dialogue that they can say, depending on if they're in your party. Chris, get up! Yeah, I'll just hit continue. Yeah, that's interesting. So the continue sound effect that plays is the same sound effect that plays when the Deltarune logo appears. Almost like that's some sort of boot up sound, like our soul rejacking into the Matrix or whatever. But yeah, as far as the whatever it's called, game over screen is concerned, there's a few bits of dialogue you can get, a few different versions. Yeah, so Noelle does not have any game over text. Only Susie and Rouse have it. yeah, Susie and Rousey. Susie has what we just saw. Come on, that all you got? Chris, get up. Whereas Rousey says, this is not your fate. Please don't give up. Which is more of him insisting that we have some fancy destiny. So that was a fun little opportunity to talk about that. But I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead to after I've finished that fight again. This is the introduction of the recruit mechanic as well, technically. Also, the way that they like hang, almost like they've been hung over the attack box, is pretty unnerving. It's kind of interesting how they release like little white sparkles when they transform back to normal. I wonder if that's anything. You won, got 0 XP and 182 DS. Phew, nice fighting again after so long. Now let's go catch up to Queen. Or not. Huh, they calm down? Yeah, those little Z's for the pacify spell. I don't think they're exactly identical to the ones that Sans emits in Undertale, but that was certainly a detail that had the Sans as a Darkener theories juicing up a bit. I just used my pacify spell to put them into sleep mode. Alright, there's already so much to talk about with Rousey just being here. I've done a whole video talking about this. I think it was my Who is the Roaring Knight video. But basically, Rousey is here somehow. How he got here is completely unexplained. We've never seen any other Darkeners travel from one dark world to another, which implies that either... Well, to be more precise, the implication is pretty strong that he had to have traveled through the light world or used some sort of teleportation device. However, there's never been any evidence of being able to teleport between dark worlds. Like, the teleport doors exist, but those only travel within the dark world. We've never seen any between dark worlds. Whereas Rousey clearly traveled from the castle town to here. So... and the reason that it seems likely that it was either a teleport door or... Well, I think actually it seems the most likely that he walked here through the light world because he approached us from the same direction we approached, implying that he entered through the same way that we entered, aka through the dark fountain, or through the library. So the fact that he came from that direction makes sense. Also, there's no teleport doors over there that we can access, so the teleport explanation requires that Rousey have entered either... He'd have to use a teleportation method that doesn't rely on doors, which we have no knowledge of him possessing, or he walked through the light world somehow, which is something that no other Darkener can do, further suggesting the notion that Rousey is special. And if he's special, then there has to be a reason he's special. And obviously the reason I think he's special is because I think he's made from a dead person's dust, specifically Azrael's. But that's just my opinion. It definitely supports the notion that Rousey is special in some way. But there's also the detail that he makes a sleep mode joke. And that kind of raises the question of how the heck does Rousey know what a computer is? Or know about it enough to make a sleep mode joke? Or know enough about school to care about homework and to send Chris and Susie off to do their homework? There's just a lot of stuff that he has. Oh, and even the glasses. It's like, those aren't exactly easy to come by in an empty, dark world. So there's just a lot of details that suggest that Rousey has more abilities than your typical Darkener and can do more things than a typical Darkener and has more knowledge than a typical Darkener. And that's further supported by the fact that he levels just like we do. His levels go up with fountains. Whereas, as far as we know, Darkeners don't level up. Like, we know that Rudens are a higher level than Rudin Rangers are a higher level than Rudins, but as far as we know, there's no way to increase your level. Actually, I take that back. Wires. Their lore is that they absorbed their wire to become wires, to become more powerful. And their levels are higher than wires. Okay, so there is ways for Darkners to achieve higher levels of power, but they are not achieved through the same methods that Lightners achieve power. And in fact, when Lightners achieve power through like fighting, through violence, it doesn't increase their level. It only increases their stats, but it doesn't increase their level. And also, it doesn't carry over to your next level unless you did so much violence that you beat the level increase. So, like, say that Rousey has 100 in his magic stat, and he's going to bump up to 200 when he levels up. Well, if he does enough violence that he gets above 200, then when he levels up, his stat won't increase. Whereas if he's less than 200, it doesn't matter how much less, he will always go up to 200 when he levels up. Meaning that, I don't know, I'm not sure what that implies. It implies that when you level up at a Dark Fountain, it's not giving you a flat amount of new power. It's just pushing you to the next level. It's just giving you the minimum amount of power necessary for you to level up. Which is strange. Anyway, so yeah, Rousey's suspicious and strange. Rousey, you're here. I felt a dark presence and hurried over. So he felt a dark presence, presumably the other Dark Fountain. But the way he phrases this is that he didn't feel a dark presence. Then he suddenly did feel a dark presence and hurried over immediately after he felt it. So as far as Rousey is concerned, as far as the narrative he is trying to portray, is that this Dark Fountain just appeared. And he only just now felt it. Because otherwise he would have mentioned it before now. He would have been like, hey guys, be careful out there. I felt a dark presence. So, I don't know what's going on. But he didn't. He never mentioned it. He says, yeah, go do homework. So yeah, unless Rousey is pulling some big brain scheme to cover up who's actually creating the Dark Fountain, which is the logic you'd have to follow in order to justify the Dark Fountain not being created right now, that would imply that, yeah, it was created recently, like in the last few minutes. Obviously, for people who believe Chris is the Knight, you have to argue that Rousey is covering for them. Although it raises the question of why they would even bother, since the only person they're telling is Susie, who is never going to process anything. She doesn't connect dots. And Chris already knows. So, yeah. A little strange. I think it's more... I don't know if it's more likely, but it's certainly simpler to assume that the Dark Fountain was created recently. That, as far as this narrative Rousey is trying to portray, then Dark Fountain was created in the last few minutes, which seems to discourage the theory that the Dark Fountain was created by Chris last night. It seems that a new Dark Fountain has appeared, yeah. And he immediately follows that up by emphasizing that he's talking about a new Dark Fountain. So, yeah, that suggests that, as far as Rousey is concerned, the narrative is a new Dark Fountain was created between us leaving the castle town and us arriving in the library. In the time it took us to get there, a Dark Fountain went from not existing to existing, and Rousey immediately followed after us. Also, the fact that Rousey immediately followed after us and caught up to us almost immediately, like we didn't get very far, suggests he had to travel through the light world, and the reason that is because time moves quicker. Oh, I remember now. Okay, so it's not time dilation. I don't think we have any strong evidence of time dilation in the Dark World as of yet. There might be some amount of time dilation, but the issue is distance. Traveling physically through the Dark World takes way longer than traveling through the Light World. Because, like, the card castle, the card kingdom, was only the size of a small room in the Light World, but it became a whole kingdom in the Dark World. So if Rousey walked through the Dark World to the Cyber World, it would take him forever because it's so big. So the idea that he got here this quickly doesn't make sense unless he somehow could teleport between Dark Worlds or he traveled through the light world. And since there's no evidence of Rousey having teleportation powers that we know of, no clear evidence. I've talked about this before. It's interesting, but there's no clear answers at this stage. Rousey, they got Noelle. Damn, what was she thinking messing in our dark world? If we don't do something, she might be... Worry not, Susie. All we have to do is seal the fountain. It's interesting that Rousey's priority is always seal the fountain. And we know why, because of the roaring. And it's true that, the Darkners won't pose a threat to Susie, or to Noelle, I should say, once the dark world is sealed, the dark fountain is sealed, but it's interesting that he always goes straight to that. He also tries to not let Susie worry about things. He's like, stop thinking about that, Susie. We have a simple plan of action. Yeah. Can't be mad about another adventure, right? Come on, Chris. Let's go. I forget which streamer it was that played the Pillar Men music when they got to this part in their blind playthrough. They were like, da 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 da. I always thought that was really funny. I laughed out loud when they made that joke. Dark World Being has friends now. It's so sus that he's called a Dark World Being instead of a Darkner. Also, I like how his sweetness is 97, implying that it may have gone down, similar to how Susie's rudeness has gone down. Whether that's the influence of Susie that makes Rousey less sweet, or whether Rousey's just slowly abandoning his happy-go-lucky facade is unclear. What's over here? Oh, you're not cowering anymore. I saw you stand up to Queen. That was amazing. I'll definitely become a werewire if you can just free me. Yeah. So that implies they were worried about that. Which could arguably mean that that could be evidence that they were worried about Queen rather than Noelle, but hard to say. Oh, here comes this bit. Oh, this is such an iconic moment. Where, we still haven't properly arrived in the cyber world. And this is the moment where the obstacles moving in sync to the music. That's so cool. God, this was so hype when we first saw this after several, 2 years without Deltarune? Wow. Such a good song, too. Such a bop. It's kind of weird that there's multiple Ferris wheels. I wonder what those are supposed to represent canonically. Good music. That's one thing I could always give Toby Fox. His music knows how to hit me in the feels. A green field extends before you, and in the distance, a city shines brightly. So pretty. A green field. I wonder what the green field represents. Is that like the circuit boards, perhaps? That would make sense, like the motherboard? I don't know. And in the distance, the city shines brightly. You are filled with the power of a new adventure. Alright, let's continue this lore playthrough. God, I still feel so nostalgic loading in, seeing this place, hearing this music. So good. Cyber world. The background's still the same, but it's a firework going off, and then the lower part, I guess it's supposed to be like, it's rounded like a world, but it's a grid because it's like cyber. Probably nothing too deep to that. Now, that is very interesting. What the heck? Let me see if I can get a screenshot of that. That thing looks crazy. So it's got like 4 metal bits sticking out of a central staff or pole, but the top is an upside down yellow heart with a green outline. That looks super suspicious. Does this shape look like anything to y'all? Maybe the top wings are meant to be like, maybe if it was a face, then maybe the top parts are like an eyebrows, and then like the lower parts like a mustache or mouth, or maybe those are meant to be arms and legs. But it doesn't make sense to have a soul for a head. Is it supposed to be like the soul? If you turn it 90 degrees, it's almost like the soul shooting a laser of green energy out of it, if you look at it that way. As for the fact that it's yellow, why is it yellow? What was the yellow soul? Was it justice? Yeah, the yellow soul mode, notably, is the soul mode that you enter to fight Mettaton and, more importantly, Spamton, or Spamton. While yellow, the soul is in shooter mode and is flipped upside down like a monster's soul, so its heart points is directed toward the foe, just like this thing. So just like how the soul... Oh. Bloody hell. One moment. I wonder if in the, whatever it's called, the Versus community, I wonder if they're like, oh yeah, werewires are powered by electricity and they shoot lasers out of their hands, and the soul can dodge those lasers. That means that Chris and co can dodge light speed attacks. They do like to think things like that. Okay. Now that guy's dealt with. I don't remember, like, how frequently do these things show up in the Dark World? Yeah, because in Undertale, the yellow soul points upwards, or gets flipped upside down, just like this, when fighting, like, Mettaton and stuff. So the fact that it's also a yellow soul flipped upside down here, and this is a world very heavily focused on Mettaton, Spamton, and all the things surrounding them, it's very interesting, because, like, presumably this is a logo of some sort. Do you think this is meant to be like a metaphorical representation of the soul creating the Dark Fountain? In terms of what the soul represents in Undertale, the yellow soul was connected to, let's see, the yellow human who is associated with guns, bullets, sharpshooting, accuracy, and justice. And, you know, obviously we use this soul mode in this game. It kind of makes you wonder if justice is like an integral theme of this chapter? Because Spamton wants revenge. He might view it as a form of justice. Queen? I don't know how much she cares about justice. Fascinating. That is a fascinating detail. I've never really noticed that before. And they're everywhere. You open a treasure chest. Inside was glow wrist. Glow wrist was added to your armors. Chest is empty. So, the glow wrist. It's a piece of armor. It gives 2 defense. It's found in the cyber world. It's described as a tough bracelet made of green wires and studded with sharp glowing lights. So it might look like fairy lights. That's not too far off a description of like the kind of fairy lights that you use at Christmas. So that's interesting. There's more than a little bit of Noel affiliated stuff in the cyber world, so I wouldn't be surprised if that's intentional. It can be fused with the iron shackle to create the spike band. If you equip it to Susie, she says, whoops, it's tangled. If you equip it to Rouse, he says, let me just untangle this. And then if you equip it to Noelle, she says, it's like holiday lights. So yeah, definitely supports that interpretation. So yeah, interesting little details there. Purple arrows pointing up. Can't think of anything significant about that. Queen's face. Anything else out here? Queen rules. Yeah, there's so many of these just like stuck in the ground. It's so fascinating. Because it doesn't make sense for anyone but Queen to have put these here. Or, you know, people working for Queen. Why would she like this iconography? Who would be associated with justice? Oh my god, I'm so stupid. Gerson, the Hammer of Justice. I'm pretty sure that's his name. Gerson's the Hammer of Justice, and Undyne was the Spear of Justice. And my whole theory about the Roaring Knight is that that the Roaring Knight is a Darkener created from Gerson's dust. Okay. I think that makes... Okay, and then Queen obviously reveres the knight, which would make sense. Although, that's... Are they implying that the knight has a soul? A yellow soul at that? Although, of course, this does add further fuel to the theory that Chris is the knight. Because if Chris showed up, made a dark fountain with their soul, and it turned yellow for some reason when it happened, then maybe, yeah, Queen saw that. Maybe Queen never saw the knight themselves, but maybe Queen saw their soul in the form of Chris's soul shooting a laser beam or something. I mean, I don't know. It's a little confusing. And although it almost kind of resembles like the jagged, weird forms of the Titans from Rousseau's prophecy or whatever, from the end of this chapter. So yeah, I would say this lends credence to either the idea of this being associated with someone connected to justice, like Gerson or Undyne, or the idea that this is connected to Chris. Or at least someone with a soul that can do stuff like this. So yeah, I think this lends credence to the idea that... That's so strange. The idea of a Darkner with a soul. It's never been brought up whether Darkners have souls or not. I guess it's never really been explained where souls come from. Are they generated by the earth? Are they generated by magic? If they're generated by the earth and magic, then it makes sense that, you know, dark worlds, which are underground, and it's proven in Undertale and Deltarune that the closer you get to the earth, the deeper you get, the more powerful, the more magic, the more determination you get access to. It's implied in the games itself, and it's almost confirmed flat out in the Legends of Localization. So that would suggest... So the point is, if souls come from the earth, kind of like Final Fantasy VII, then Darkners having souls might make sense. Because, like, what did they say souls were made of in Undertale? Like, compassion and love and stuff like that? And Flowey without a soul was pretty monstrous. So... And most Darkners are pretty chill. That would seem to suggest that maybe Darkners do have souls. And if Darkners have souls, then someone who is made from the corpse of a Lightner who definitely has a soul would presumably have a pretty powerful soul. Since they're not only having their own soul provided by the earth, but like the remaining energy or essence or power of someone else's soul. That's why Chris is so powerful, I think, in my opinion. So it makes sense that the Knight is similar. Especially since they're going to be the main antagonist up until we reveal the true antagonist. But I digress. Although, you know, looking at Rousseau with their green outfit and the soul symbol, it does kind of remind me of how this image, this pillar, this whatever you want to call this, is also green with a soul shape. They're not the same shade of green, I don't think. Are they the same shade of green? No, they are not. I'm not good at, you know, telling that stuff from a glance, but yeah, so that's fascinating. Why else would they revere souls, a yellow soul in particular? I mean, if we're thinking about it another way, the library was run by one of Gerson's family members, Mrs. Boom, who I think is either implied to be Gerson's wife or Gerson's daughter. She's the one who runs the library. Like, she's the one who Berdley works for, at least, and Berdley works at the library. So it's possible that some of the stuff here belonged to the Gerson family. And if they're affiliated with Justice, then it could be that that carried over into the Dark World. If you work off the theory that Darkners inherit their traits and attributes from the essence of the Lightners who owned those objects, then it would make sense that a family associated with Justice would leave a Justice yellow soul impression on the cyberworld. Fascinating. There's so many of them right here. I don't remember seeing these elsewhere in the game. Those are so interesting. Wow. And then we have teacups. The teacups seem kind of out of nowhere, and they are. But there's also a kind of like a carnival circus theme to the cyberworld. Hence, like, the Ferris wheels everywhere. So having other carnival rides, like the teacups, which is a pretty classic, like, Six Flags type ride, makes some amount of sense. I thought I saw something. I didn't... there was something that showed up briefly on screen. I'll have to check it in the footage, because I wasn't sure what it was. Actually, I'm just going to pull up a video of it, because I'm way too lazy to look back on my own footage. Okay, it was just yellow arrows that appeared briefly on screen to tell you, to kind of hint at the fact that you can rotate them. So, nothing important. Something kind of interesting is the fact that we're going upwards. Like an elevation. That might be worth keeping track of. And here we have, I want to say... I forget, are you sweet or capping? When you have a cap on. I think you're sweet? I don't remember. I historically do not like the sweet capping cakes. Mostly because I find their characters kind of boring. Yeah, he's got like a DJ thing going on. A rocket DJ. Very cute. Flying off into the distance. Gotta love that it syncs up to the music. That's such a fun gimmick. It's such a small thing, but it's a delightful thing. Ah, I'm bad. Well, you know what I haven't been doing? I have not been checking in on... Oh, that's interesting. You can't enter... Yeah, you can't enter your menu while that like, bullet dodge thing is going on. Okay, I was just checking to see if Lancer had said anything new. I am a little curious, though. Okay, yeah. No. I was just checking to make sure that I didn't miss any Lancer dialogue, and I have not. At least as far as the wiki is concerned. What a view. So yeah, we've gone up quite a bit of height. Kind of interesting. Oh. And that is a cat, or a task, to be more accurate. You know, when I was ranking character designs, I really did not understand, and I still kind of don't understand, like, what tasks are supposed to look like. Yeah, still don't. A book on a column. Who put this book here? Oh, Chris, it's a free editable cyberpedia. I'll add an entry. Cyberpedia. I guess that's referencing Wikipedia, and that hence why, and you can edit things on Wikipedia, so presumably that's what Rousey is referencing here. Rousey wrote an article about losing recruits. Read it? Yes. It's pretty funny that Rousey wrote just a full article in a split second. From now on, defeating enemies with violence will make them lost. Keep in mind this is from Rousey's point of view. So he wrote this, and it's very interesting that he's explaining a game mechanic to us, because he also mentions saving later on, like whispering to Chris, or thinking to the soul, or thinking to the player, depending on how you want to interpret it. So the fact that Rousey is so keenly aware of these game mechanics is very suspicious. It suggests that he's more than he seems. Or knows more than he should. But yeah, so it's curious that this mechanic is only introduced in Chapter 2. It's like, why is that only now relevant? Is there a lore reason? Or is that like Toby Fox taking his time introducing mechanics? Or is that a demo thing? Where it's like, in the Chapter 1 and 2 demo, they don't introduce this mechanic until Chapter 2, but in the full game, maybe they'll introduce it in Chapter 1. Because it is a bit weird looking back on Chapter 1 and being like, oh yeah, nothing you do will change the fact that all of these enemies will join your town. And if this game cares at all about your choices having impact on the world, then it seems kind of strange to take that away from us. And if you argue, oh, but the whole theme is that your choices don't matter. Yeah, but the theme of... I don't think that's the correct takeaway. I think the point is that you're supposed to be... You're told that your choices don't matter, but then the gameplay heavily emphasizes that that's not the case. Just like how in Undertale, the game says, oh, it's kill or be killed, when the gameplay demonstrates, very blatantly that it's not kill or be killed. You can get away without any death. So if that's how it works in Deltarune, it seems kind of strange that you wouldn't be allowed to, recruit things properly in Chapter 1. So yeah, I don't know. Bit strange. My hope, my blind hope that's probably wrong, is that when the full game is released, all of the mechanics will be backloaded into Chapter 1, and maybe the game will get updated a bit to have a little bit more content in the first 2 chapters. Maybe that's hoping for too much, but I do feel like the first chapter is a little hollow compared to Chapter 2, game mechanics wise. Maybe that's just me. But yeah, also I'm just now registering what the Cyberworld sign was referencing with the if you look above us, there's these green lines spreading out across the sky. And I think that's what was referenced on the sign. And I'm only just now thinking about it. What are those supposed to be? Because obviously in the Card Kingdom, we very rarely got to see a skybox. And when we did, it was usually just black. So seeing this here, where it looks almost like the sun is setting in the background, just like how the sun's kind of setting in the light world right now. And then there's these waves, these green lines stretching out. And they've already mentioned green wires. So are these supposed to be all the wires connecting the various computers in the library, in the computer lab? Or are they meant to represent the internet? It doesn't make sense for it to be the internet because the internet's down. So yeah, I assume these are the wires connecting the various computers in the labs. And then the wave lines, the ones that radiate outwards occasionally. Right now there's none on screen, and here they come. They're going straight up. Those, maybe those represent data being sent out. Could be. But yeah, from now on, defeating enemies with violence will make them lost. Lost enemies cannot become recruits ever again. It's interesting that we use the word recruit here, because a recruit, I would assume, is meant to be a soldier. Yeah, the definition is a person newly enlisted in the armed forces and not yet fully trained. So yeah, calling them recruits does kind of almost make it feel like Rousey is planning for us to build an army, which is interesting. But the bonds you break may make you stronger. This is a very suspicious line, and I find it very suspicious that Rousey would write this down instead of saying it out loud. It's almost like he doesn't want Susie to hear it, because she would object. But the bonds you break may make you stronger. I mean, it's true that if you fight enemies, your stats go up. But why would Rousey tell us that? It's very interesting because it lends credence to the theory that Rousey cares first and foremost about our free will and our agency, and so he wants us to be aware of all the options available to us. He doesn't want to shoehorn us into just one route if we don't want it. Because he's all about choices mattering. He thinks choices do matter, and he wants to emphasize that fact. It may even be his highest priority, considering he's willing to let us do things that Rousey clearly considers morally unacceptable, but he lets us do it anyway because he values our freedom. So I think that's interesting. But thematically, it's a curious sentiment. The bonds you break may make you stronger. Is that true? Does breaking bonds in real life make you stronger? Socially, no. Emotionally, probably not. I guess fighting, I don't know. Thematically, that seems very video gamey. I'm not sure that's a sentiment that carries over super well. I mean, I guess if you look at it through the lens of gaining power, political power, social power, maybe sometimes burning a bridge here and there can lead you to greater levels of influence overall. Maybe that's thematically what it could represent. Or it's just a game mechanic. Chris, we want to reread my editable Cyberpedia entry? Ralsei wrote an article about losing recruits. Read it? Yes. From now on, Ralsei drools, Susie rules. Also, Susie probably wrote that, but this is really funny. This is like a kind of subtle way of confirming the pronunciation of Ralsei's name, because the way Susie spelt it out was Ralsei. From now on, Ralsei drools, Susie rules. I don't remember writing that. Yeah, you did. What's funny is that almost implies Susie might have actually read that thing and then deleted it to make her entry. That's funny. Where's it? Read it. Interesting. Very interesting. And the fact that it gets deleted almost makes it feel like the game doesn't want you to dwell on that fact. Like, if you think about it too hard, you might realize some things. Upside down cat. This is a plug boy with eyelashes. And yes, they're all referred to as plug boys in, like, the code and stuff. So that's interesting. This one is plug boy with eyelashes. Recently, something called Internet is having an outage. Yeah, the Internet's down. Currently. I wonder if there's a lore reason for why it's down. I wonder if Chris took down the Internet. Oh, that would be crazy. That would be crazy if Chris realized that they couldn't provide any more lies about what happened to Ralsei, or what happened to Asriel, and so they needed to cut off the link to the outside world and to Asriel by, or to what they think is Asriel by taking down the Internet. And with the Internet down, no one's going to ask Chris for information about Asriel. So that's interesting. I wonder if Chris did that. I wonder if that's within their capabilities. I mean, I've never taken down internet service for a whole town before, so I'm not entirely sure what that would entail. Some say it was the secret to Queen's know-how. Yeah, so having access to the internet made you not only know more, but also made you more, gave her new attacks and stuff. Since then, it seems like she's become quite extreme. That's interesting. The internet went down, and it was only after the internet went down that she became a tyrant. And we also hear later that it's only after the night appears that she becomes a tyrant. So that provides a bit of a timeline. The internet went down around or before the time the night appeared. Yeah, because when we talk to Alphys, like immediately after class, she specifically mentions, and this is before the Dark World has appeared in the castle or in the cyber world. She mentions how we haven't been able to talk to Asriel, implying the internet's been down for a few days at least. So yeah, the timeline seems to be internet goes down, cyber world is created, and Queen encounters the roaring night, and that's what made her extreme. It also further explains, her extreme behavior, because something that's been pointed out, and that I've pointed out, is that it seems like Dark Fountains may actually radicalize people. It makes them more extreme. It enhances their attributes. Like, Queen goes from, a computer ruler of this strange world to wanting to conquer the whole world. Same thing happened to King. He went from the lowly ruler of the Card Kingdom, or part of the Card Kingdom, to having aspirations of global conquest. It's curious that both ended up being like, oh yeah, we should take over the world. That seems... I wonder if that's a case of the Dark Fountain just makes you more extreme in general? Or does the Dark Fountain impart upon the Darkners who are exposed to it some essence of the Knight's will? Because if the Knight wants darkness to cover the world, then maybe but if you spend too long near the Dark Fountain, that will, that desire, starts to kind of be absorbed by you. Because Queen and the King are the ones who spend the most time in front of their respective Dark Fountains, and they're the ones who get radicalized. No one else gets radicalized. So it could suggest that either A, it radicalizes your pre-existing attributes, or which is to say, it makes them more extreme, or it specifically imparts upon you the extreme desires or values or beliefs or whatever of the Roaring Knight. Both are valid possible explanations at this stage. I'm really only interested in cute digital cats. I don't think the internet has anything to do with that. So, something interesting about the Plug Boys is that they're kind of meant to be a representation of typical internet users. This is the kind of person who only used the internet for cute cat images. So the fact that they're here could be implying, potentially, that in the overworld of Deltarune, we're still in the age... No, that doesn't make sense. Yeah, no, I take that back. I was going to say, maybe this is still in the early age of the internet, where people just use it for cute cat images and don't really use it for anything else. But there's other references to things like, you know, blogs and social media, and those are definitely later era things, especially Twitter. Twitter in particular is kind of referenced, and that really didn't pop off until the 2010s. So yeah, I think, yeah, so the Plug Boys just represent different types of internet users, it seems, and this represents the kind of user who just uses it for cute little silly superfluous things like images of, you know, videos of cats doing silly things. Oh my gosh. Cat jump scare. So this is the tasks. The way they're spelt is kind of funny. Okay, yeah, there's quite a bit of interesting lore, or not lore, but like, as far as their character design is concerned, it was finally, the Wikipedia finally explained what they were going for. Their ears are supposed to be like tabs on a browser, and like the X's are your opportunity to close the browser. I get where Toby was going for it. I still don't think it helps the character design too much. There's a couple interesting details, yeah, about the tasks. For one, they're only dialogue. They don't speak. They only say meow over and over again. However, their meows are actually convertible into binary, which can then be converted into English. However, all their meows translate into is meow. So, with one exception, when they are pet, they do a longer quote of meows, and that can be translated into a heart emoji, according to the wiki, anyway. However, what's more interesting is what we learn about Noelle. So when interacting with them, we can't do it yet because we haven't unlocked S action and R action and all that stuff. But Susie, you know, can roar at them to be like, "Ooh, who's king of the jungle?" And he'll say, can talk to them softly, and Susie remarks, "Isn't that just how he normally talks?" However, what's more interesting to me is if you do petting X with Noelle, she says, there, or there, and then in her mind, she thinks it's not too different from Caddy, which is really cute, because that implies Noelle's pet Caddy. And it seems like Caddy may or may not kind of have a crush on Noelle, so that's a really, really adorable little bit of lore right there, like kind of heartwarming. There's some other funny little interactions and details. Most of them aren't like aren't lore-wise super interesting. Let me just double check. Susie yelled at Task to get off her lawn. That's one of the things Susie can do with S action. So maybe that implies Caddy, or maybe Caddy, one of the cats from the cat family, have hung out on Susie's lawn before. Although, does that imply Susie has a house with a lawn? That doesn't seem to be the case, because it's implied in Chapter 2 when you're walking around with Susie that she lives in the apartments, which don't have a lawn. I mean, it doesn't prove that... I mean, it could just mean nothing. It could just be her yelling at a cat to get off her property, and it's not meant to be lore. Still, interesting. However, the only other detail that I thought was interesting is when Noelle does Noelle in action, or the Noelle action, Noelle can get, the lines that can be read is, Noelle got rubbed on by Task, and Task showed its belly to Noelle. Further emphasizing that Noelle gets on really well with cats, and by extension, Caddy. So yeah, that's most of the lore that I thought was of note with regards to the tasks. It's mostly just confirmation that Noelle and X-Caddy is a much better ship than I gave it credit for. To be fair, I've come around a fair bit on Caddy since my time ranking ships, mostly because of the character design ranking. I've just kind of... I've just seen too many bad female characters, and Caddy's design kind of is more interesting than most. So I have higher hopes for her now than I did once before, and so I'm kind of more approving of her ship with Noelle by extension. So that's pretty funny. Petting. You pet task, I like that. Meow, 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 meow. Yeah, so like the upper task is saying like a heart emoji. That is also wags its tail in a sine wave. That is also another feat. One of its attacks is literal sound waves, which Susie already has a confirmed feat in Chapter 1 of intercepting sound waves. So further evidence of them being faster than the speed of sound, which is very, very silly. I've never done Roar, so let me do that real quick. Susie roared. The enemies became tired. Who's king of the jungle now? It's just a cat. I'll say spared task. It's also kind of interesting that you can only spare up to a certain number of these things. Are they implying there's only 5 total tasks in this world? Or are they implying that our town only has room for 5 tasks? Why do some enemies need to be spared like 6 times instead of 5? Because I think like the werewires had to be spared 6 times. So why the discrepancy? So that's interesting. Talked in a soft voice to the enemies. Hey there, it's okay, little kitty. Isn't that just how he normally does? Meow, meow, meow. But yeah, more of these pillars. Another task. Task. And here we have the fedora wearing plug boy. This one is meant to be a reference to the internet users, the Reddit users, the tip my fedora to my lady. While you did X, I studied the blade. That whole cliche of internet dwelling nerds. That's what this is referencing. I don't like that cliche. I think it was very mean-spirited, but I digress. Lightners, I haven't seen many, not Toby Fox specifically being mean-spirited, but I think the whole culture surrounding it is mean-spirited. Then again, to be fair, most of the internet is mean-spirited. Pretty much the internet's powered by mean spirits, so I digress. Lightners, I haven't seen many of you recently. Interesting moment. The plug boy's referring to all 3 of us as Lightners? Potentially, which is interesting because that implies that he can recognize us as Lightners on sight, and I'm not. And Spamton does that too. It kind of makes you wonder how they can tell that. So it's presumably has to do something with like our souls, or perhaps like the way our power manifests. I don't know. Because like Darkners can be all shapes and sizes. You can have humanoid-looking Darkners. Lance is not too different from people like us. So it has to have something to do with like souls and energy and magic and things. But yeah, I haven't seen many of you recently. So why hasn't he seen many of us recently? Okay, perhaps because the internet's down. People wouldn't have any reason to go to the computers in the library if the internet's not working. Although you could argue they're referring specifically to I haven't seen many of you in the dark world, but I don't think that's the case. I think that assumes that these dark worlds exist independently of like dark fountains existing, and I don't think that's the case. I think before the dark fountains created, these dark worlds don't exist. So yeah, because like when they're talking about Lancer's the Card Kingdom disappearing at the end at the start of Chapter 2. They don't talk like, oh, it went back to its normal plane of existence. They're just like, no, that dark world is gone. So I don't think these worlds exist prior to the Dark Fountain being created. I don't think they continue to exist after the Dark Fountain is closed. So yeah, I think the only explanation here is that he's saying Lightners used to be more common in the library, or at least in the computer lab, and they're less so now. If you didn't know, an evil ruler is taking over this world. Yeah, Queen. Not much to comment on there. I don't really like politics, so I have no opinion on this. People on Twitter love this quote. Gotta be on one side of the radicalized political spectrum or the other. No fence sitting here. If you try to talk to me about politics, we'll have no choice to cross swords. There's your, while you talk politics, I studied the blade reference. Yeah. Obviously, that joke is just pointing out how, oh, even when things are going bad in the world, some people will just sit out of politics and not get involved, even though things are getting bad. Oh, another scene of these, too. I need to remember to go back and go up to that north route. I think that's where Newbert is. Noelle, honey, become my willing peon and I will free you. Willing peon and I will free you. Noelle, honey. It's interesting because Queen does kind of treat Noelle like a child. Or not just a child, but like a daughter. So the idea that the Queen represents Noelle's mom. Because like in Chapter 1, the King was a parallel to Susie. So it makes sense if the Queen is meant to be a parallel to Noelle's family as well. And by parallel to Susie... So it's possible that each Dark World boss will represent, like, the leader will represent, like, a parent of one of the characters. Maybe King represents, like, Susie's dad. And, like, that's why Susie acts similar to King. Because, you know, her dad's the one who made her like that. And then Noelle is similar to... Queen is similar to Noelle's mom. In that she is cold and calculating, like a computer. And yet, Noelle does seem to have fondness for Queen, despite that. All you have to do is hit yes on the peon release form. I'm scared. Oh, have you never signed a form before? No, it's everything else that's scary. Please abort your sadness protocol. I told you being a peon will be cool. Queen's an interesting character. She's one of the more complex antagonists so far. Not to say King was that complex, but, you know, it is what it is. Noelle! That's an interesting Susie talk sprite. Susie, Chris! Don't worry, we won't let your face get roboticized. That's something they're going to do? Oh, man. Whoops. Thought you knew that. This game's so charming. Have I mentioned that? Oh dear, that was supposed to be a surprise. Oh well. Such a confident move. Just flings the cage away. Wait. It is quite troubling. A peon must be willing to assist me in world domination. Why? I guess because the way dark fountains are created requires that you concentrate like your will and your determination. Is that why she has willing in quotation marks? Like instead of like instead of it willing in the sense of it being like consensual, rather willing in the sense of manifesting your will. And if you're not, loyal or if you're not on board with it, then you can't really manifest your will. That's interesting. Yeah, so she's already thinking about how she needs Noelle to create more dark fountains, to assist in world domination. If only she had fellow peons to encourage her. So like, you guys, hey, are you like doing anything right now? I love the way her little talk sprite turns. She's so funny. We aren't going to help you. Oh my gosh. Okay, and like here we see Ralsei's goat face in all its glory. Understood. Mind-changing protocol necessitated. A swatchling just appears out of nowhere. Creates that, and then dips. It's pretty funny how both Susie and Ralsei freak out and like back up really far, and Chris does not react. A giant arcade game? This is a funny looking arcade game too, I just noticed. Is it supposed to... Is it supposed to look like a face? Kind of like the two red circles on the left and right are like ears, and then the triangles are eyes, and then like the knobs are like kind of make a mouth shape. I'm not sure. I shall humiliate you at a simple children's diversion. With your self-esteem eradicated, there will be no choice but to serve me. Is she sticking her tongue out at us? God, she's the best. The hell? I've never played this one before. But Chris is quite good at games, aren't they? How does Rouse know that? Even if that were true. Like, if we assume Rouse isn't just blindly flattering and just assuming Chris is good at things, like I don't know. I don't think Rouse would assume that. I think Rouse knows that Chris is into video games, they like video games, they're good at video games. And we have further confirmation of that. Like, there's several references to Chris being a gamer in various places, both in-game and in the sweepstakes and so on. So, the question is, how does Rouse know that? No other Darkners know who Chris is. You know, like, Queen doesn't know who Chris is, which is potentially evidence of Chris not being the knight. But yeah, how does Rouse know that? It's just further proof that Rouse has knowledge that he shouldn't have. And that's really kind of intimate knowledge too. Like, that's knowledge of Chris's hobbies and pastimes. So it makes sense if Rouse, had Azrael's memories. Oh yeah, Chris, forgot you were a nerd. Sure. You see, Susie knowing that might make sense if she's seen it brought up by Birdley to Chris in class. Susie, yeah, so like there's potential explanations for Susie knowing. Or perhaps she didn't know. She's equating gaming with being a nerd. So maybe I don't think Susie knows Jack. But Rouse knowing is very curious. And now I can talk to people. Chris, I bet you're very good at games, aren't you? Just a second ago you said with complete confidence that Chris was very good at games. Oh wow. Gaming is my life, gaming is not my life? Oh dear. Alright, yeah, I was looking at the code to see what the two different responses are. If you say gaming is my life, Susie says, that was the most monotone response I've heard in my life. And then Rouse says, wow, Chris, your passion is amazing. Because, Rouse is a little toady who tries to pump Chris up every chance he gets. But Susie's like, this is pointing out how, that's interesting. Because the fact that Chris is monotone might suggest that Chris is not particularly invested in this sentiment. Because Chris tends, that's a potential running theme in this chapter, is how Chris only shows enthusiasm for answers that they themselves actually agree with. So if Chris is being monotone here, it could be that they aren't actually, like, gaming is my life isn't true to them. So that's interesting. Now, normally I always say gaming is my life, but today I'm going to say gaming is not my life. If you aren't enthusiastic, I won't want to enslave you. That's a funny line, but it's also further referencing the fact that she needs people to be, willful in order to create dark fountains. And she doesn't want slaves that aren't willful enough to do that. We don't want that. That's such a funny face Rouse is making. Think ahead. You will after I enslave you. You'll want to be enslaved after I enslave you. Very funny. Do your best, Chris. I'll be cheering you with magic pom-poms. Potentially implying Rouse can create magic pom-poms out of thin air. I mean, they're able to summon, like, costumes out of thin air. So maybe Rouse, I guess that makes sense. Further effeminate... What am I trying to say? That is an effeminate thing. That is one of many effeminate things being associated with Rouse, which is interesting. Whether it means or anything, or it's just meant to be cute, I'm not sure. I bet there's a lot of fan art of Rouse dressed as a cheerleader. There'd probably be that kind of fan art even without this line. But yeah, Susie. We got this, Chris. We're the good guys, right? Yeah? All we have to do is figure out some way to cheat. Susie's adorable. Got it. Well, she's distracted. I'll reach in the bottom and try to steal a free cola. Huh? Cola machine not equals arcade game. Then why does it take quarters? Cola machine not equals arcade game. That is the funniest line. Oh my god. It's so funny. Most people don't get this dialogue. Most people just say click on the game immediately. That's so funny. Oh, Chris, congratulations on losing horribly. So yeah, she knows our name now, but people have said her name repeatedly. I advanced my internal clock to when I already won. That's an Animal Crossing reference. You can... I'm pretty sure. Also, I guess she would know our name because she actually has profiles of all the people who've used the library before. So that's interesting. Also, happy birthday, Susie. Happy birthday! It's not my birthday! That's really fun. That's definitely an Animal Crossing reference. Because, like, when you fast forward the clock, they probably say happy birthday if they missed your birthday or something. Yeah, that's pretty funny. Did you notice you have been served? Your giant arcade machine is going to get cold. Oh, because it was served on a literal silver platter. It appears to be some kind of force field. Interesting. Shockingly, this still does not do anything. Still nothing new from Lancer. Now what happens when I click on the back of this thing? You can't pro game while facing this direction. That's so funny. You can't pro game while facing this direction either. Alright, let's get this over with. There's some loudness happening in the background in my house, and I probably want to wrap this session up. Oh god. You tried to use the arcade machine. You weren't tall or strong enough to use the controls. Interesting. I actually used this as evidence for Chris not being the knight at one point, because they refer to the knight as having like a long hand or a long arm, which Chris doesn't have, as evidenced here. And I basically said, why would it's interesting that they would point this out right here, only to have that be brought up as like a descriptor for the knight later in the same chapter. Just a potential bit of subtle hinting. Foreshadowing. Self-esteem eradication complete. Running laughing protocol. So it says ha 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 when she's really saying ho ho ho. It's okay, Chris. I'm short too. Chris, wait, I have an idea. Chris, if we can combine our powers, then... Look, I'll show you what I've been practicing. Magical stool form R! This is a cute little throwback to Chapter 1 when Lancer does something similar for Susie. And apparently, upon seeing that, Rouse has been practicing this. Which is interesting, because it seems like Rouse has broad knowledge of certain things, but not specific knowledge. Like, he didn't seem to know that King would betray us, and he also didn't seem to know about this ahead of time, and thus wasn't prepared to practice it until last chapter. So that's an interesting detail. There's gaps in his knowledge, and that could potentially clue us into what is the source of his knowledge. So yeah, it's mostly just a funny joke though. Magical stool form are referring to Rouse. Now we're talking. Alright, Chris, leave it to me. Alright. Put your arms out. Look at this crazy, ridiculous animation for what is Power Beast form as. Y'all are nerds. Y'all are total geeks. You're dorks. Move your arms and I'll move them with you. Let's go. Incredible. Rip Ralsei. Your transformation is combining all your weak points. Self-esteem crushing efficiency 300% and rising. Commence virtual combat. Press Z or X if you dare. Shut up. It's interesting. The background is very... The background is very reminiscent of this Cyberworld logo. I'm not very good at this, am I? God damn. Oh, damn. Her head explodes. The screen explodes. The game explodes. Ha! Thought you could beat us? Regal laughter. Oh my, that was actually quite amusing. It's so funny because like the Queen shows multiple signs throughout the game that she actually genuinely likes the heroes, the Chris, Susie, Ralsei to a lesser extent. She would prefer not to be fighting us, which adds further credence to the idea that maybe the Dark Fountain's messing with her, making her more extreme, more evil, because she spends most of the game away from the Dark Fountain because she's in the Cyber City looking for us. It's only at the very end that she gets near it, and it's only then that she starts doing really villainous things like threatening to kill Susie, or using Birdley as a meat shield. It's like only then does she start becoming a bit more, wicked. You life forms have exceeded my expectations. Interesting that she would label Ralsei as a life form. I will offer you a new, exceedingly benevolent compromise. Assimilate into my cyber army, and there's only a 50% chance I will reprogram your face. Please select your choice. Perish in the chill of absolute destruction, or flourish under the warm bosom of my hellish reign. That's such a fun line. So yeah, bosom or perish. Okay, yeah. So if you choose bosom, which is definitely the funnier option, Susie's like, but bosom? And Queen cuts in, it means titty. And Susie's like, we know what it means. We aren't helping you. And Queen says, understood, preferences set to perish. However, the more interesting option is if you choose perish. The hell did you say that so enthusiastically? It is possibly concerning that this is one of the few times Chris is described as enthusiastic, to the point that Susie thought it worth commenting on. Literally, Chris is saying, Queen says, get enslaved or die, and Chris enthusiastically chose die, which points to poor mental health, which makes a lot of sense given any interpretation of this game seems to paint Chris as being in a pretty bad place mentally, no matter what you think's going on. So that's interesting. Queen, aren't there any other options? Ralsei takes that in total stride, by the way. He's like, yeah, no. So that's kind of It's kind of sus, actually. Yes, you can also mega perish. Yeah, no, perishing bites. You could say it, megabytes. Oh, ho, ho, ho. Would you get out of here already? Oh, man. Sans and or Papyrus would love that pun. Understood. Preference settings set to perish. Come on, let's go after her. Looks like this gamer's paradise has become a gamer's hell. Alright, let me save here. The game is wrecked. You are filled with the power of video game violence. That could be a reference to like Mortal Kombat, because that was a very infamous game, arcade game, with regards to its video game violence. Like it actually got like laws and stuff changed. Oh yeah. Recruits. Task 2 of 5, Werewire 4 of 6. It could just be referencing how we fight more Werewires than we fight tasks, and that's why there's more. But it's still kind of strange. We don't get their full information until we've recruited them all the way. We don't get their likes and dislikes. Interesting. Alright, I've been recording for over an hour now. Yeah. Including sections that I cut out, so... or not including sections I cut out. Anyway, I'll try to remember to go back and check out that spot up here in the next session. Does that save point go away? No, but a guy shows up. 1 second. I can't tell you how many of these I've cleaned up. That's it. That implies that Queen has challenged more than one person. Like multiple people to arcade battles. That's pretty funny. That could suggest that she's been fighting other Lightners, like maybe Noelle or Susie? Or Noelle or... what's her name? Berdly? But... hard to say. It's not so bad. I like cleaning. Interesting. Here, let me just go check on this route up here. Yeah. Apple. Chris, I think you should handle this puzzle. Oh, Chris, it's a spelling challenge. Isn't that N-I-C-E? Nah, more like they're F-U-N. Y'all are both silly. Goodluckris. Good ruck. Goodluckris. Yeah, I see letters. I basically check out. Always been annoying how much your hair smells like apples. Never been easy not taking a bite in class. I would call that flirtation if it weren't for the fact that Suvi is repeatedly emphasized to be starving all the time because of her poor home life. So I think it's literal in this case. I wonder if you can spell stuff and get a reaction out of them. It would be possible, maybe, but only if you could, like, start on the other side. Apple. Newbert. The Newbert zone. Looks like you got past Newbert's force field. Newbert doesn't know how that force field got there, but it's Newbert's force field. As a prize, have Newbert's treasure. Newbert doesn't know what's inside, but Newbert will give it to you. That's Newbert's treasure. Remember, you're just borrowing it. Forever. I wonder if Newbert always refers to themselves as Newbert instead of using a pronoun. You opened the treasure chest. Inside was Fiber Scarf. Fiber Scarf was added to your weapons. Chest is empty. Okay. I think the Fiber Scarf is, you know, for Rouse, obviously, but is it better than? Oh, it's an attack scarf. Scarf made of soft microfiber, balances attack and magic. Delicate scarf that increases healing power but has no attack. Yeah, I think I'll leave the dainty scarf on rather than the fiber scarf. However, I will go ahead and pull up the fiber scarf's wiki page to see if there's anything interesting there. +2 attack, +2 magic. A scarf made of soft microfiber, balances attack and magic. It's found alongside Newbert. Newbert proclaims it to be stronger, but he's permanently loaning it to the party. If you attempt to give it to Suvi, she says, or she doesn't say, but she seems to think, soft, ... And if you try to equip it to Rouse, he says, oh, my fur is staticky. If you attempt to equip it to Noelle, she says, sure, I'll... Huh? It's a weapon? Okay, pretty low thing. Yeah, all Susie says is soft. Potentially implying that, I don't know, she doesn't have much softness in her life. I'm curious, is Newbert gone? Nope, Newbert's still here. Alright, let me go back and save and then we'll end the recording session. Alright. I'll take a break here. We'll be back with more recording at a later date.